I want to say thank you to all my Patreon supporters and my Twitch subscribers. Join the Guardians, become a member, or become a subscriber on YouTube, Patreon, and help support the channel.
And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Hippy Dippy Recruitment Show with me, Tyler Bell, your host. Ladies and gentlemen, theys and thembies, Reds and Blues, and Pick-me's too. Welcome back to the Hippy Dippy Recruitment Show with me, your host, Westside Tyler. It's September 22nd, 2024, and we're bringing you another 2.5 hours of the hot-blooded, knockdown, drag-out, big panel debate you know and love. Today's topics include: who is better positioned to lead the United States into the future, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? What is the best sandwich? And should the Department of Education be dismantled? Our interlocutors will be given 1 hour for the first topic, 1/2 hour for the second, and a final hour for the final topic. Each individual will be afforded a brief 1 to 2 minute opening statement in the order they were announced, and then we'll hop directly into the open panel. Speakers may be randomly muted throughout the open panel at my discretion to provide other interlocutors time to speak, to control the conversation, or for any other reason I see fit. Finally, each segment will end with a final set of roughly 1 to 2 minute closing speeches. Now, to introduce this episode's wonderful contestants, please take it away, Cypher.
Hey everybody, this is Cypher. I stream or record under Cypher Report, so I'm happy to be here. I'm lib left. What else can I say? Go Elizabeth Warren.
And Tom Foolery. You are muted.
Thank you. My name's Tom. I go by Tom Foolery Show. Stream mostly on YouTube. Kind of a centrist, liberal kind of person.
Okay. Crimson 60620.
What's up, guys? This is me, Crimson 60620, and I am a leftist. I have a lot of different political views, but mostly about making sure that we make the left welcoming for all people, not just outcasts.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Bryce.
Hey, I'm Bryce Live. I am one of those wacky progressive conservatives up in Canada. I like American hegemony, and I like rules-based international order.
And Joe Lewis.
How's it going? My name is Joe Lewis. I'm very glad to be here. Just for general context, I'm one of the Hippy Dippy veterans. I think I'm like the second or third most invited guest and appeared guest on the original show proper. So I'm very glad to be here, and I really hope these people get opportunities the same way the Hippy Dippy gave to me.
And Lactoid.
Hey guys, I'm Lactoid. You can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I am a right-leaning libertarian and an attorney.
Alex Kirsch.
Hey everybody, my name's Alex Kirsch from the Alex Kirsch Project. I'm a pragmatic progressive, U.S. Army retiree, truck driver, streamer, and I'm also a gamer, and I'm ready to do this hippy dippy. I've been, Danabo was trying to get me 3 years ago, but I'm finally here now.
And finally, Phil K.O.E.
Folks, it is I, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that makes you the podcast cower, the prince and potentate of the political parlance, and one handsome man, if I do say so myself. You can, of course, find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. I am also the winner of the first ever Hippy Dippy Royal Rumble. So basically, it's like Shawn Michaels. Basically, that's what you got right here, folks. And you can, of course, find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. And I am going to be probably, I suspect, the rightest-leaning person on this panel on pretty much any old subject you want to talk about. So without further ado, let's get right into this.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, you heard that challenge to all my right-leaning Confederates out there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and any and all pronoun enjoyers, I want a good, clean fight. Do not violate TOS. Do not Fed post. Do not use slurs, including the R slur. Limit personal attacks on the other contestants to facts relevant to the current discussions. Minimize crosstalk and interruptions during opening and closing statements. And defend yourselves at all times. Taking it away with the opening statements for the first segment: who is better positioned to lead the United States into the future, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? One more time, that is, who is better positioned to lead the United States into the future, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Cypher, take it away with 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I think that the fact that this is even a question is kind of mind-boggling to me. I think that we have seen 4 years of what Donald Trump had to offer, and it was all crap. Every single thing that he did, well, almost virtually everything single thing he did was crap. But that's not neither here nor there, honestly. What we need is someone that is going to take us forward, not backward. If you can't tell, I'm memeing and dreaming here a little bit. But with all due respect on that case, I think Kamala Harris is the best person to take us into the future because she actually has plans that will actually help the American people out. Every single American person, not just their cadre of people. So that is where I'm at.
Okay, and moving it along to Tom Foolery. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I don't care so much for Kamala, and not a huge fan of her, but I do hate Donald Trump more than enough to vote for Kamala. I think that after Trump's first presidency and everything that he did there, the obviously January 6th, the attempted coup, the amount of vitriol that he had towards people that he was that he deemed to be political opponents or even people that he just didn't like, using the government and the Justice Department to go after people just because they might have looked at him wrong or been big meanie heads to him. The fact that he seemed to have a lot of problems with the way that some of the bills that he wanted would affect the rest of the country, or the ways that he would, said that he was going to be able to get everything done and he was going to be the best deal maker, yet wasn't capable of actually doing anything. He wasn't able to get a whole lot passed while having both the Senate and the House. And yeah, pretty much overall, just kind of a big joke and an embarrassment to the United States. So I think we'll give Kamala a chance to embarrass us this time.
Thank you, Tom. And just as a reminder, please keep that microphone just a little bit closer to your mouth. And moving on to Crimson, you have 1 minute.
Well, I feel that Kamala would actually be a better president than Donald Trump has been. We've seen how he's wanted to roll back things. How do you go forward if you're going to roll back? To use the old tired joke, when you go to the Democrats, you go forward. When you go to the Republicans, you're going to reverse. And when you see things that are coming on the horizon, the reemergence of the Spanish flu or H1N1 or the swine flu, when you see the environmental changes coming forward, when you have somebody who thinks that windmills cause cancer, you need to look forward to someone who actually has a plan, not just a concept of a plan.
Okay, thank you very much, Crimson. Going on to Bryce, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to throw a curveball in here. I might be Canadian, but I also love America. I just want this incestuous infighting that they're doing to stop. I want American hegemony to continue. I want the rules-based international order to return to that liberal glory that it used to be. I want to protect the USD as a global reserve. And I like that we're protected. I like that we're able to be rich as a result of being buddy-buddy with the United States. And I think Harris is awful. I think a lot of her proposed economic proposals are going to be awful when we look deeper into the economic analysis of what they're proposing, which is really, really vague. We don't really know what either of them stand for. I think Harris poses a greater risk. I think she's a little bit retarded. And I think Trump has a chance to learn from his idiotic mistakes. What?
Point off. No slurs.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, also, empirically speaking, experience doesn't map out to success, and I don't think that her being VP has anything to do with her success as a president. So I think Trump has the more potential, a better ceiling as a president.
Okay, thank you very much, Bryce. Moving on to Joe Lewis.
I think Trump is a better option for the world, unironically, but not in the traditional way that those on the right may argue. There'll be lots of death, compromise, and ruin relationships internationally, along with other obvious and unobvious loss. At the end, the U.S. hegemon will be perceived in its full form, which puts the rest of the world in a crossroads where they can either reject it or just embrace it, which I believe would be a fool's errand. With Harris, the U.S. idea of normalcy will continue to decline at the same pace it's currently in until you see some type of significant fallout in places like Ukraine or the Middle East broadly. Then you'll see it spiraling faster and faster, and then due to that economic decline, the United States will engage in more risky behaviors in the attempt to maintain normalcy. Trump will hurt our allies and enemies the most, severing international relationships for sure. And in the next 3 years of that, China will begin to surpass the United States and a bunch of different economic metrics as the United States begins to decline. And then we're talking things like general assets for Americans and the dollar broadly. I think neither of those futures are good options for Americans.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Lactoid.
Yeah, thank you. So I believe Donald Trump will be better positioned to lead the United States in the future between the two, primarily because he's not as bad as Kamala when it comes to a history and proposals that undermine norms and traditions of America, as well as proposals that are just simply stupid. Let's start with the fact that Kamala Harris did not win any primary. She threatens court packing and desires to appoint non-originalist justices to the Supreme Court. She was rated by GovTrack as the most left-wing senator in 2019 and one of the least likely to work on bipartisan legislation. She has proposed banning the sale of assault-style rifles, which includes sporting rifles. She's proposed mandatory gun buybacks in 2019, and she said that she's open to reparations and supports affirmative action. She continues to want to provide handouts to high-income workers in the form of student loan forgiveness, which is a handout, and she openly supported government-funded gender surgeries for transgender prisoners. She's proposed economically illiterate proposals like taxing unrealized gains, price controls, and rent control. Her running mate, Tim Walz, let BLM burn down Minneapolis and signed a bill that allows abortion up until birth with no requirements necessary. You cannot trust this sort of moderate, joy-focused aura that she's putting out now. It's just a smokescreen for it is not a moderate person. I'm not saying that Trump is actually all that good. There are some negatives about him as well, but generally there's some proposals that he's been putting forward that are pretty good, right? He's reversed course as to what most Republicans think on weed, and is primarily in support of marijuana now. He wants to remove certain taxes, such as taxes on overtime and tips, which is going to encourage more work. And he's generally less expansionist on the government than Kamala Harris.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Alex Kirsch.
All right, so why Kamala Harris is better suited to be president. She's been elected to pretty much all forms of government as district attorney, attorney general, and senator from the state of California. She has stated that she's willing to bring in Republicans, moderates, along with Democrats in her administration. She has no problem with people who disagree with her, unlike one other person. Her running mate, Tim Walz, is the best progressive choice you could possibly make. His ability to negotiate bipartisan deals while as governor for the state of Minnesota with policies that are overwhelmingly popular and are issues that people actually do benefit from. This helps them both out. Tim Walz has legislative accomplishments that J.D. Vance does not have. She will continue to negotiate drug prices with Big Pharma, is willing to address the drastic need for PBM reform, which is pharmacy benefit managers. Mark Cuban, a successful entrepreneur, has been working with her campaign, giving her ideas on how to help new entrepreneurs and small businesses get started and grow their business models. She wants to implement policies where people don't need to get a degree in order to get a standard job, which is found to be required for most jobs, and in making it difficult for people to get better paying jobs today. Actually answered that she's willing to stand with allies across the world, unlike somebody, and is not going to bow down to dictators, and address the child tax credit and make childcare more affordable, because right now it's $1,230 per month on average, which isn't sustainable for parents. Donald Trump has proven to be an ineffective leader as president. People say, oh, the economy was great under him. Yeah, if you inherit a great economy, of course it's going to be great. But what happened to that economy? The global pandemic hit, and he did a horrible job with it. The true test of a leader isn't when things are going great, but when things are going to hell. And you set the example. Trump was born by his then National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, who was joined by Matt Pottinger, who have experience in China and how they handled pandemics. Robert O'Brien even told Trump, this will be the national security threat of your administration, and Trump ignored it, and even said that conversation never took place. Former members of administration have stated he does not like to read intelligence reports, and he interrupts intelligence briefs by saying, wait, Fox News said this. I saw this on
15
TV.
seconds.
Anyway, so long story short, Donald Trump has proven that he's an ineffective leader. He does not like to listen to people that he thinks are smarter than him. He will undermine our policies, and I yield my time.
All right, thank you very much. The first person to actually bring it all the way down to the line, and finishing up with Philco.
Well, folks, when you have the choice in 2024, you've got three choices. There is, of course, Donald J. Trump. There is Kamala Harris, and also Phil KOE running for president. Keep that in mind. But also, one of the reasons why Trump would be better than Harris to line us up into the next few years would be pretty simple. We've lived under 4 years of Donald J. Trump, and you will notice the sky has not fallen upon our heads. You'll notice that the water still turns on, and the lights still showed up, and the lights still turn on, and the train still showed up on time. when you look at the fruits of Trump's labor, take away his rhetoric, because that's what most people that don't like him concentrate on, because they're not really talking about Trump. They're talking about some Captain Planet villain that represents Trump in their mind. When you look at the actual fruits of his labors, on the domestic side, he was a fairly moderate Republican president at best. His tax relief, which was incredible, Mitt Romney would have signed that. The Supreme Court justices that he put on to the Supreme Court, like pretty much anyone that has been on the Republican stage in the last 20 years would have considered them as well. So when you look at the fruits of his labor, he was a fairly moderate Republican president. On the international front, however, is where he really shined. He was the first peacenik president that we have had in generations. He was the first president since Harding to not get America involved in any new wars. And to be frank, how hot things are heating up around the world, I think we could use a little bit more peacenickery in the White House, to be frank. Now, there's one thing that was said about, like, how do you roll forward when you're trying to go back? It's one of the reasons why Trump has such an amazing appeal that a lot of people don't quite, a lot of people on the left just can't understand, because they think progress is good for progress's own sake. Progress is about the last thing you need when you're heading in the wrong direction. So keep that in mind in this particular
10 seconds.
election. Also, if you're a conservative Christian, you have a Republican Party that's going to give you tacit lip service to Christian values, and you have a Democratic Party that's openly hostile to your Christian values.
Thank you
God
very
bless, travel
much,
well.
Phil KOE. We are now going to be moving into the full panel discussion. One last time for everybody sitting at home, if you got a little bit lost during that, our first discussion topic is: who is going to be better positioned to lead the United States, who is better positioned to lead the United States into the future, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Folks, the floor is yours.
Bill, I want to say something because of your because of your opening. So you said that Donald Trump was a peacenik president. Does a peacenik assassinate a world leader?
Where did that happen?
Soleimani?
Yeah, where did that happen?
Wait. A world leader as in a terrorist leader, an openly terrorist leader that the U.S. acknowledged was a
He is
terrorist?
the equivalent. So he is in Iran. He is the equivalent of the head of the State Department and the head of Special Forces. That was
Cypher,
his
are you under
position
the
in
impression
Iran.
that he was the first foreign national to be killed in Iraq? Do you think
That's not-
everyone that our military
that's
killed
not
in
what I
Iraq
said.
were
I
Iraq?
said,
That wasn't
does
the
a
Are you out of your
question.
fucking mind
I
here?
just
That
said what
wasn't
I
the
said.
question.
Answer
Ask
the
the
question.
question. Stop dodging.
Answer the
No,
question.
no, I
Does a
actually
itself
didn't.
peacenik
is
assassinate
You have
a
to-
world
Iraq.
leader?
Wait,
So yeah,
world
it was
leader.
already a war we were in. So
What do you mean world leader? How can you
We
classify
weren't
somebody
in
as
an
a
Iraq
Iraq
world
war
leader?
at that time.
Okay,
Somebody
does
that leads the IRGC
fine.
is
like,
not a
granted,
world leader.
I am a
So,
king,
okay,
the king of extreme, so I'm a world leader too. If we're going by
You're-
that standard,
you don't want to
I
do
mean, let's-
you don't want to do world leader. Fine, a high-ranking government official in another country, hostile or not.
That's been
does
happening,
a
like,
peacenik?
That's a war, man.
Does a
Wait,
peacenik
when
do
did
that?
we declare war on
hang on,
Iraq?
hang on.
After it was
Cypher,
ended.
Like,
There is an element of being correct. Yes, Donald Trump did do the best he could with the fucked up situation he inherited
What
from his
fucked up
predecessors.
situation is that? What
The
was
wars
what was
that he
exactly going on?
inherited coming into
What war?
office.
So let me ask you this.
What war were we at with
War,
Iran?
man. Are you out
Yo,
of your mind?
Phil,
This
let me
was
ask
in
you
Iran-
this.
This was the Iranian leader. There was no war going
Yeah,
on. Actively.
where was he? Was this
He was- he
this
was
in
visiting-
Pennsylvania? Was this in Russia? No, this was in fucking Iraq, an
He was
actual war zone. So
It's
not a war
newsflash,
zone.
someone
It wasn't
died
a
in
war
zone.
Just
It
because
wasn't a
you
war
yell
zone
it
at the time.
loudly doesn't
This
make you
actually
correct.
This actually happened.
No, it's
during,
the
this
correct
happened
part makes
at
it
the
correct. What else
Iraqi
allowed?
international airport, a civilian airport, and that's where the bombing happened. We didn't inform the Iraqis of that because we didn't want to like tip them off, which is fine. I don't mind.
It also
that so much.
wounded
But
Americans, if I'm remembering correctly,
wounded-
for the sake
Yeah,
of
we
it.
still
Exactly.
have active
So is that a
military there,
peacenik?
and we're going to pretend
Is that a
like,
peacenik?
well, it's
Is that a
technically
peacenik?
We
not
have
a war
active
zone.
military in
peacenik?
Texas. That doesn't mean we have a war there, you
It
idiot.
can be. Well, it can
Also
be.
inside our own
it can
borders,
be
we
a-
can put our own military. Where the
Just to
fuck
be
we
just to
want.
clear,
Yes,
you
let's
can
go,
be a
Lactoid.
peacenik. Yeah, you can be a peacenik and assassinate a terrorist leader. Just like Obama could be a peacenik when he killed Osama bin Laden, right? You could have situations in which a president
Or Anwar
is like
al-Awlaki.
generally peaceful or generally
but-
pro-peace, as
Well-
opposed to other people, which is the discussion here. We're talking about Kamala versus Donald Trump. I don't think that the assassination of
Is-
Soleimani, which is one of I think the high points of Donald
Does-
Trump's presidency,
Does a
I don't think
peace-
that this undermines the fact that
Great.
like, he's a
Great. So
generally
we can-
more pro-peace president.
Well,
Oh my
you
god.
still there?
I'll stop. Go on. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Alex.
I mean,
Okay, I
don't
accept
think
your
it's,
concession. He is the more
There
peace
is no
president.
concession. I just don't want to
think that it
dominate
matters
the
one way or
conversation.
the other, whether or not you agree
Accept
with
your
the
concession.
killing of Soleimani. It's that because it seems like from all of
Trump's generals afterwards and from everybody at the Pentagon that it turns out that all of them were running around behind the scenes, always trying to clean up messes for him. So when you look at why there were no new wars, it seems like a lot of it was because of them going and making calls to world leaders on his behalf, trying to tell them that.
Are those the same generals that Trump wants to court-martial? Are those the same generals that Trump wants to court-martial?
Yeah, you got to understand something though. Anytime somebody says Trump never started new wars, it's not okay. Jimmy Carter didn't start any new wars. Gerald Ford didn't start any new wars. Richard Nixon didn't start any new wars. So to say,
you can look up. They all put troops on the ground in different countries that they didn't previously.
Okay, those are small conflicts. Are those organized wars or are they just conflicts? Because every president has increased troop activity. Trump did it as well.
Yeah, that doesn't really.
Hold on a second.
That distinction doesn't matter to the families who have a loved one who dies in them.
Wait. Was that the same families that Trump's made fun of for Gold Star members?
Color their that does not change their sacrifice in any way.
No,
for our nation.
you and Alex actually agree on that point. That's Alex's point. If you let him fucking finish.
Yeah, and
I'm doing it better though.
No, you're not doing it better. Okay, so here's the thing: the fact of the matter is anybody says, "Oh, Trump was the president of peace." No, he was less transparent with his drone strikes. No, he wasn't. He was less transparent with his drone strikes. They actually covered up a lot of the drone strikes that took place in the middle.
That he inherited Obama. Obama was doing it from Bush. He fucking left office, man. Come on.
Obama actually had restrictions on the drone war. I can talk to this because was actually my job. So Obama actually had more restriction on the drone war in order to win hearts and minds in both Afghanistan and Iraq. Before Obama took office, there was no casualty scans in Iraq or Afghanistan. That means if they were go hot, they were allowed to go hot, right? So if the order was given to kill somebody, that was done. Well, but I'm saying those are what I'm familiar with. Okay, so. But when Obama came into office, and the drone war became public knowledge, he's like, oh, this is actually fucked up. I didn't realize, or maybe he did, I don't know, realize that there was no casualty scans. So they would call off missions if a livestock, entered a 500-meter radius kill target zone around the target. They had to go 500 meters in a radius around the target, and they would call off missions. Trump removed that restriction. Do you think that
he didn't do that shit for American citizen Anwar al-Awlaki? What the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, no, he didn't do none of that shit for American citizen Anwar al-Awlaki. Obama just.
I don't think you care about that guy, but that's fine.
He was an American citizen that wasn't even aware of any charges against him, and he was summarily executed, dude. That was a moment our whole country changed.
I know that you're the king of pivots, KOE. I know you're the king of pivots, KOE, but
no, you just don't like the fact that you're kind of cornered there.
I'm not cornered. I asked you a question.
Wait, you pivoted away from Soleimani, just to be clear.
No, they got rid of reporting civilian deaths.
I want to talk to you, Lactoid, about that, actually.
They made it where they're not able to actually report civilian deaths under the Trump administration while upping the amount of drone strikes. You don't even know how many people they killed.
Oh, that's bad. Trump did the best he could with what he inherited from Obama.
When you take away a policy,
you also inherit what they did before. You can't just make it fucking disappear.
So KOE. Do you recognize that Biden inherited the Trump pullout date, which caused more chaos than what it actually benefit from?
He did. He also changed it, and it was a disaster for our country, and he left way too much.
It was going to be a disaster anyway. It was going to be a disaster.
Afghanistan was never
way too much money behind, way too much equipment. Like
that was
actually
has really good
KOE. Did you serve? If you didn't serve. KOE, if you didn't serve in the military, you don't realize that is pretty standard operating procedure. We leave equipment because they can't use it, or we disable it and leave it there because it's more expensive to transport it back for no reason.
Yeah, they're still using our M4s, so we didn't do that.
Yeah, who cares about M4s? They could have bought those on the open market.
What the fuck? Dude, are you kidding me? The fucking Taliban defeated the world's greatest fighting force with rusty Kalashnikov rifles and a couple of improvised...
So why do we care about M4s?
So now we're giving them better equipment. Thanks.
Who made that deal? Who made the deal that actually released 5,000 Taliban insurgents?
Who was in office when it happened? Who does the buck stop with?
Donald Trump.
I'm just curious. How does this all tie into Trump? You guys are going way off. You guys are going off on this like tangent that has nothing to do with like Harrison Trump specifically.
Yeah. Well, I just want to it seems like you want your cake. it seems like you want your cake and eat it too. Like getting out of Afghanistan was a good thing, right? Were we in agreement with that? Like, and Donald Trump is the one that ultimately
what I would say to you, Lachwood, is
he was the
getting
one that
out
put the
of
plan into
getting out of Afghanistan needed to happen years before it happened.
Yeah,
the way it was. But you can also agree that the way that it was done under Biden's leadership was a complete disaster, and it could have been done better.
Wait, you can. I agree. Like you can criticize the commander in chief at the time of the pullout.
We can all agree on that.
You can criticize the person like Biden for not reacting appropriately to changing circumstances on the ground, as is your job as the commander in chief. You can, of course, you can do that, right? This would be like blaming, if somebody gets fired and you replace them, like 5 months later, right? Blaming them for something that you were in charge of at the time. I totally get that. There's absolutely criticism to be had there, but I do think it's the sign of like a more peace-oriented president when you have somebody put into motion, like, hey, we got to get out of Afghanistan. We've been here for 20 years. We've spent God knows how much money, and we've lost Americans. We've lost so many lives regarding this, and it's the new Vietnam. We can't stay here forever. And Donald Trump is also now saying, hey, we can't let Ukraine turn into another Vietnam or into another Afghanistan. He was the one that armed Ukraine when Obama refused to, in order to try to prevent Russians from coming in. And then now that the situation is what it is, he's the only one that's actually saying we got to like end the war now because of the amount of casualties, the amount of civilian casualties.
Well,
I think this is relative. I think this is a more pro-peace position. I think this is a more pro-peace position. Yes.
Well, why won't he actually call for which side he supports more? Why is it he didn't, like when he was asked very specific during the debate, do you want Ukraine to win? He refused to say whether he wants Ukraine to win because everybody knows.
Who gives a shit? We just want it to end.
I don't care who gets to waggle who. The win conditions that Ukraine has set. The win conditions conditions that Ukraine has imposed are absolutely unfeasible. Ukraine has passed
because they want their land back?
Ukraine
because they don't want to give up their military?
Yes, and this situation that is unfeasible. The idea that they want Crimea back when they've signed a bill saying they will not negotiate with Putin, the head of the Russian Federation, this is absolutely unfeasible. This is unworkable.
Let somebody come in and take your account and you tell me that you want to just let them have it.
I'm not saying just let them have it. I'm saying that there needs to be a compromise solution to end the bloodshed.
Yes, the compromise solution is Russia takes their ass back to Russia and gets out of Ukraine.
Realistic. That's reasonable. They're going to do that.
Here's the problem. You guys all have your different positions, whether you're pro-Ukraine, pro-whatever. I am a shill for big peace. I don't care who gets to throw up the middle finger to who at the end of the fucking war. If you could show me
so let me come and take over your house.
I want to address that.
Let me come in and take over your house with this force. Let me come over and take over your house with force.
Do you want me to address that?
It's gonna end in Berlin Wall 2.0. I predicted that the day the invasion happened. So that it's gonna be some arbitrary line, and it'd be more like the
it's gonna be demilitarized zone between.
That's my, it would be like North Korea, but that was my nickname for it. Berlin Wall 2.0. We're gonna have to play political hopscotch around this area for 20 fucking years because that's what Russians understand. Russian baby boomers understand that kind of logic. The West is contained behind a wall.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's a perfect spot. Perfect spot. I'm gonna cut you guys off. We're not leaving this topic, but we're going to move from external policy to internal policy. Perfect. Let's move to education. Yeah. We're not education yet because we're going to do that later. No. Let's move to healthcare. Any internal policies, anything like that, just move in from the outside of America. Go ahead, pop off.
Yeah, Kay, I want to give a moment to. I'd love to give a moment to clarify something, KOE, because there is something tangentially related to something you brought up earlier and what you guys were arguing for, right? So one of the biggest critiques that I have for the Trump administration, among many other things, is their high turnover. So much so that it was deemed an unlawful tenure within the acting secretaries within the Department of Homeland Security, something that is very important to the sanctity of the homeland and American homeland. So what do you say to people who are skeptical at Donald Trump's ability to appoint people in positions so that the actual departments itself can be in a functioning capacity? Because objectively speaking, the Department of Homeland Security under Donald Trump was an absolute failure. So what do you say to people who have that type of criticism?
What I would say is you have to understand in the business world that it's a very dynamic place where you need different leadership in place at different times. And so if Trump wasn't satisfied with someone's leadership, he would want them replaced. Now, the question I have to pose is, like, let's say you're President Joe Louis, okay? Wouldn't you want to have the team you want when you need them rather than, well, I can't replace this guy because, well, it would look bad to the newspapers. And so you as President Joe would want the team you need dynamically as you need them to, because every day is going to be a different challenge.
Well, I would
So
agree
different
with you.
managers
Hold on,
also
that
make
was
sure
addressed
that they
directly to
hire
me,
the
and I'd
correct-
be more than happy. I'd
Yeah,
be more than
there's-
happy to respond to that directly, and then we can get to whatever you want to say, Lactoid. I think it is absolutely unacceptable that Donald Trump failed to appoint somebody in Department of Homeland Security across the entire 4 years of his presidency. What do you say to that? Because if you're looking to get people in positions that you want in a substantive manner, Donald Trump failed to do that objectively. However, in particular with the Department of Homeland Security, that is a clear and apparent failure. So how can I, as someone who's looking at this objectively, rely on Donald Trump to appoint someone in a position when he couldn't do that for 4 years? Like, how do you engage with that problem?
Quite easily. If you want to look at FBI crime statistics from 2019, this is a fascinating piece of statistic. And this also speaks to the tremendous work that Donald Trump did against things like ISIS and such, the fact that we don't even talk about them anymore.
Even though the FBI overtly says to not use those statistics for analysis
you don't know what I'm about to say.
But go on. I know what you're going to say.
No, actually, you don't. Because in 2019, they could attribute 40 deaths to white supremacy. Okay, that was something interesting to note. But do you know how many deaths that they could attribute to Islamic terrorism in the United States in 2019?
Yes, the greatest threat to the home, the greatest threat to the greatest threat to the homeland, as Chad Wolf.
So that
the greatest threat to the homeland, that the threat assessment, the numbers don't speak for themselves. Because within that very report that you're citing, the terror report, reports that I read regularly, it overtly cited that white identity extremism and general extremism broadly is the greatest threat to the homeland domestically.
Correct.
And now if you read that report further, they identified a bunch of key features, one of which is a disaggregation of these threats to the homeland, where they're generally disaggregated. So you have individual lone wolf actors, as was cited in the 2020 report, I believe in the 2021 report as well. But again, I'm not hearing exactly how you think Donald Trump is going to address his high turnaround and his inability to appoint people in cabinet positions. I'd really like for you to
really
take the opportunity to clarify that.
I haven't spoken. I tried to let everybody talk.
All right.
Just to be clear, Joe said I could go next.
Wait.
Just to be clear.
Let's go to Lactoid. Lactoid, go for it.
I'll go.
It's a direct response. It's unclear as to whether, like, what the effective turnover rate is. But regardless, Kamala Harris's turnover rate among her staff was 92% in her time, and then Donald Trump's was 85%. So based on just the percentages, it's more predictable that Kamala Harris will have a higher turnover rate than Donald Trump.
Are you talking about as VP?
Yeah, as VP, her staff turnover rate was 92%.
I don't necessarily
what was
think
the
those
reason
two
for
things are directly connected,
Yeah, I don't think
Lactoid.
they're-
But maybe
Somehow
you
it's
can,
just for her.
can speak to the thing. Maybe you can speak to the thing that KOE decided to not engage with. How are you comfortable with the idea that Donald Trump will have another opportunity to have people in unlawful tenured positions, or a more way to be a bit more
Unlawful
charitable and
tenure
less?
positions.
Yes, the
Yeah,
Department
because
of
you
Homeland
can't-
Security position was deemed an unlawful tenure because it was never filled in the 4 years. So what do you say to people who are skeptical to Donald Trump's ability to appoint people, in particular the Department of Homeland Security? What do you say to that criticism?
I'd say nobody.
Yeah, I think that ultimately they are serving at the pleasure of the president. The president this is the constitutionally important. They are the executive appointees. And if they don't do what the president wants to, because he's the elected, in this case, assuming he wins, he'd be the elected representative of the executive, then yeah, he should remove them. But I'm just saying that, like, if you think high turnover rate is a problem, I'm not necessarily sure it is. I think you should be getting rid of people.
My problem is Trump's ability
Hold on. Yeah, you should be getting rid of people if you don't like them. But, like, it appears that Kamala Harris has a higher turnover rate amongst the people that she works with. I agree, she's not president, so we don't know exactly how that's going to translate over. But based on the information we do have, if we're predicting on a future administration, it'd be fair to say that she would have either a higher turnover or also an incredibly
I don't
high
think you
turnover.
actually addressed this. I think
Again,
that's the problem.
like to be.
I don't think that you guys are interested. We're getting way too much credibility here.
I can maybe pin this down a bit more directly, Lactoid, to give you
the
general
DHS,
yes or no.
Who runs
question.
the DHS?
The secretary of the DHS.
The secretary of the DHS.
Yeah. So you specifically claimed that Trump never appointed anybody to the DHS.
There was never a confirmed appointment to the DHS Secretary of State because they couldn't find a person that they liked. So under we're talking about separation.
Chad
of
Wolf was
powers
acting.
Here. Chad Wolf was everyone was acting. So we're talking about separations of powers here. Lactoid, I know that you're a constitutionalist and a libertarian. Shouldn't the Senate have to confirm an appointment that's going to last more than like a year or something?
Potentially. I mean, I'll have to look more. I haven't actually heard this particular criticism before. I'll look more into
So
it.
here's the thing.
By the way, just to be clear, even if this is like a fair criticism that this should have been confirmed quicker, or that he's having issues with turnover, that's perfectly fair. But again, like we're making a prediction as to between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump for the next presidency. That's the
right.
question.
I mean, past his prologue, and he was actually president.
We need to understand something. Like,
exactly.
When it comes down to the Donald Trump administration, when Donald Trump was in office, it was known that his administration was called the Viper Room because people were pitted one against another one. And the thing is the reason why when people say, "Oh, well, if Donald Trump was being a dictator, why did he do it in the first term?" It's because he had the guardrails of people that actually understand how the government is supposed to be run.
Correct.
He's made it 100% clear that his next administration, he's only going to hire people that are loyal to him. Now, here's the thing: it's not so much like, yes, you serve at the pleasure of the president. But the thing is, though, you have, as a leader, you have to be willing to have people that will tell you, no, you can't do this. Rex Tillerson told him no. James Mattis told him no. John Kelly told him no. And he did not like being told that he was incorrect on things. Now, the reason
sometimes
why
also have to
illegal
lead.
too. Yeah. Illegally too. He was told no because these things were illegal.
Because, well, here's a good example. He wanted to bring in the 82nd Airborne to quell riots. You cannot do that. That's not the purpose of the 82nd Airborne Division. Mark Milley told him, no, that is not their purpose. But Donald Trump, because he doesn't know how the government works, he has no idea how the government works. He just wants to do things his way because he thinks, oh, I'm a successful businessman, which is still up for debate.
Barely knows how to business.
So I gotta interject again because I gotta go
president.
back to this is all predicated on like a fundamental like obfuscation of like certain facts in your history.
What?
So I looked into like some details because I was really interested. Like, wow, like Donald Trump wouldn't appoint anybody to DHS like that. That's kind of
It
a
was
big
not a
claim.
matter
That
of
kind
wouldn't. He just
Wait,
never did.
Shut up. Let me talk. Hold on. It was silent. I let you guys rant and rave for
No
many minutes.
metagaming. Just get to the
So-
point.
Go for it.
All right, so you guys say that he wouldn't. He specifically proposed nominating him for the permanent position. It was
was
Democrats
never my
that
claim.
specifically contended. Okay, the point is that the process that he went through in order to get him to acting secretary was contested by Democrats. He would have proposed him as a like permanent position. So it's specifically clear that you're trying to make a claim that like no, because you're trying to make a claim that like hold on.
So
You're
the
trying to make a
Democrats
claim. You're
stonewall
trying to make a claim that specifically he's not going to appoint, he's unable to appoint, et cetera, et cetera. But clearly the intent to appoint is there.
He's
the
unable
intent
to.
is
That's Joe Lewis's claim.
So,
Yes,
Joe, the way
he's
you would
not
address
unable to.
that
He's
is
already
vote Republican in your local
established
Senate
that he is
elections.
able. The ability of somebody as like
That's
in
how
a
you
role
address
of a
it.
president
Vote
or executive,
Republican.
whatever, to appoint somebody has to be substantiated by the thing like, wow, he's actually unable to do it. And
Yes,
this
he
is
was
not
unable
him.
to because he couldn't make it. He couldn't make
Because
it.
he was
legally.
stonewalled.
Because the
You're
Senate held
putting
up.
the blame on
I
him.
didn't know
The
this.
answer
Blame
is
on
vote
him.
Different
Republican.
situation.
To your question,
Yeah.
that's how you get around it. You vote Republican, put more Republicans in the Senate so that Trump can get his
This is
appointments through more easily.
Complete
And you're-
shift of the
does the
goalpost.
Senate-
This is
You can
complete
rest
different.
easy.
This is a completely
just
different point
rest
than what you're
easy.
making.
Does the-
Originally,
no, it
the
wasn't.
claim. No, hold on. The original claim was that like he didn't and that he wouldn't.
He was
If you're
unable
tr-
to. Was
The
what
original
was
claim
the
was
claim.
that-
Why was he
Entirely
unable
different
to?
point.
That's the question.
Because he doesn't
Yeah.
know how
I
to
mean,
balance
I
powers.
can answer.
Because he
I
was
can,
Stonewall.
Democrats wouldn't let
okay,
one
I
get
can
appointed.
answer that question that Lactoid asked, but generally speaking, it's a few different factors of that. One of which is strategic preferences, just basically the general differences
Somehow I
between.
think Joe knew this before he started this question.
Yes, because I know how to read. The biggest, the thing is like there were political considerations that ran into problems
so you
with
were
the
lying from the
appointment.
beginning. Okay.
Something that you mentioned that there are levels of collaboration that are involved with appointing these people. Another one was just strategic differences between the people that he wanted to appoint and what professionals within the field were recommending. But again, the problem here is that he did not find someone to confirm in 4 years. So I am skeptical at his ability to find someone that he'd be able to confirm if you give him another 4 years. So, and I'm not exactly sure about how Donald Trump goes about that significant hurdle
how to
of
prove they're lying.
appointing people. I understand the desire, like, hey, maybe we just appoint more Republican individuals. I mean,
Did you guys support Amy Coney
Or-
Barrett getting appointed to the Supreme Court? Did you support that 100%? Say, A-OK, I like it, and get her right on the court?
He didn't even
Does
support
that
it. She
matter?
had to
I bet
ask
you
permission
didn't.
from her
I bet
husband.
The point-
suddenly, somehow, the separation of powers is
That
a
is
little
separation of powers. We don't have to
Yeah,
like it, but we
somehow-
can say. Okay, so the guy that
You
is the
supported it?
master of the
So-
art, the guy that is the master of the art of the deal, couldn't get a fucking deal. That's what you're saying, KOE. So
Yeah.
Trump can't even do the
No,
main
he
thing
got
that he's
3
supposed to
Supreme
do.
Court
and still go
nominees
there.
on the court. That's quite a
So
deal.
if
That
he
wasn't
had
a
the
deal.
opportunity to make 3 Supreme Court nominees
That is also
on the
good old
court,
Rich.
why can he have the opportunity to get the same Senate to pass for one of his secretaries.
Thank you. Damn.
Well,
I mean, it all boils down to the
Senate's
process
probably
that they
going
had,
Republican this time
so
around,
when-
so he will.
When you look at the details,
argument
there's
made
a
is the-
specific claim about them, the order of succession. The claim that they tried to use to say that he's invalid to nominate for like permanency is that like he was incorrectly nominated for acting secretary based on like the order of succession, like
It
something
was
where it's
deemed
like
an
literally
unlawful tenure, but go on.
okay. The point is that you're going through these things with like a fine-tooth comb, being like, what is something that we could try to find to try to like make this guy invalidated? It's not like
I think it's
his
very
credentials are bad.
valid to
He's
question a
outrage
Republican
trolling,
president.
okay?
No, I think it's fairly valid for a Republican president to not appoint someone within a department that only came about to be because of Republican leadership and administration, that a Republican president can't appoint that. This is a department that has been essentially majority run by Republicans, save the Obama administration. Mind you, for context sake, this is a brand new department in the terms of the long scale departments. However, in the tenure of that, it's been majority Republican leadership. You had, if I'm remembering correctly, Tom Ridge, followed by what's that dude's name? Woman's name, excuse me, Janet Napolitano, I think her name is. And there might be someone.
Napolitano.
Yeah, but she was a Democrat. But before that, there was the entire administration for Bush was Republican leadership under that. Followed then, obviously, for the Obama administration, you had Democrat leadership. But then, when you look at Donald Trump alone, you had, I believe it's like 7 different individuals navigating that department. So I don't know what you do with that when you're trying to posit that, hey, we care about national security a lot, but not enough to appoint someone in a position whose only existence came about to be was national security. It seems like a contradiction that Republicans had to
Well, no,
engage
we
with.
explained to you why. You just don't want to accept why. So
You can
that's all
restate it
there
if
is.
you'd like.
I mean, the art
Well,
of the
no,
deal guy
the
couldn't get a deal,
Democrats
so-
blocked it from happening.
The art of
How
the
do
deal
you
guy couldn't get a
prove
deal.
that they blocked it, KOE?
Okay, I think right here's a good place. I think right here, hey, whoa. I think right here's a good place to move into a third subsection of this where I really think we can get a little bit heated. What are the risks of the candidate you don't want to get elected? What are the risks if that to America and to the world if that candidate gets elected?
Oh, wow.
Pop off, let's
first.
go.
Okay. So here's the reason why is because Donald Trump has already made it abundantly clear that once again he's only going to bring in people that will be loyal to him and will answer to him alone. John McEntee, his former aide, actually was going around during his last days
You
of his
want
administration.
people that serve at the pleasure of the president.
Now, shut up. Hold on. Okay, he was actually going around having people sign
I will when
loyalty
you're not
pledges
wrong.
to Donald. I'm not wrong though. I'm actually going based on
You
what
guys are agreeing with each other.
No,
It doesn't
anyway.
matter.
Because he was having people sign loyalty pledges saying that they are only loyal to Donald Trump. He said he's going to give full immunity to the police department, which basically means police can pretty much do whatever the fuck they want to without any repercussions. He's already said that he's going to be a dictator for one day. History has shown that dictators never give up their leadership. They never, ever give up power. And this guy literally, he says what he means. He definitely says he's going to be a dictator, but people just flat out, oh, he's just kidding. He's not kidding. He's made it abundantly clear. He does not kid. He is not sarcastic. So go ahead.
And if
People
we
said
want to
he
talk
was a
about
dictator
civil libertarians,
last time, and
we
he
want to
gave
talk
up
about
his-
civil.
He's gonna be a dictator for a day, so we're worried he's gonna become a dictator for life. I've seen the fucking
If we-
ads. These are the fucking ads that are coming forward. It's
Sure.
ridiculous. If you
But-
actually
but-
watch, like many things he says,
We know
when
what
you
he
actually
was
watch the whole
being.
speech-
A
But hold
person.
on, when you actually watch the whole fucking speech, you realize, wow,
We know what
this
he's
is, like,
talking about.
Not at all what he's actually
He's
saying.
being
This is
sarcastic.
being- this is
he's being
being
exaggerative.
clipped,
We know,
just like
but
they
he
did with the
shouldn't be
very,
doing that.
just like they did with the
He's the
very fine
president.
people, just like they did with the very fine people.
The very fine people one was
comment.
actually accurate.
That was no, it was not. That was
No, it was a hoax.
It's
That
very
was
It
accurate.
wasn't. It was accurate.
No, he actually-
hold
no,
on,
no, you can read this-
wait.
Tomfoolery, are you going to stand for this? Where are you? Tomfoolery, are you going to stand for this? Where are you
And
here?
Snopes.
Both
Snopes.
Politico and Snopes have both ruled that as being a fake news story that was being
wasn't.
pushed. Okay,
wasn't
then you
fake.
disagree with both Politico and Snopes. When it's
I do.
politically convenient
Wow,
for you,
exactly.
when it's politically convenient for
okay,
you,
but it
I
doesn't
actually
matter.
I can have a
Snopes.
I can have a conversation with you on this. And it's absolutely the case that it is a false thing to say that Donald Trump
No, it's
called
not a
white
false thing to
supremacists.
say, and I can tell you why.
Hold on, brother.
Do you want me to
It's
tell you
No,
why,
he
though?
said two
Well, no,
sentences
you
later
can
that
you
he
can tell
was
me in just a
condemning
second.
the white
It
supremacists.
seems like I
Doesn't
get
matter.
two
He said
sentences
two
in.
sentences
I
later
understand.
that
It's
he
like
condemned
whatever.
white supremacists. So
You're
Yeah,
gonna
he
say
sorry.
he said not the white
when-
nationalists and
yes.
not the white supremacists.
Yeah,
He
he did all say that.
specifically
Yeah.
he specifically
That's
said
So
all
you
he's going to
still believe
condemn.
this fake news?
He's going to
No, it's
condemn
not-
white national. Yeah, he specifically
That's
said he
all that was
condemns
said.
the white supremacists totally. Yet you
Sure.
have both
That's
Kamala
everyone.
Harris and Joe Biden lying
Yeah.
consistently.
Do you want to know why?
I'm
Do you wanna
worried.
know
What
why?
I'm worried. Hold on, because they like to lie, I guess.
No,
But what
it's not.
I'm,
It's not.
what I'm positing.
No,
is
Cypher,
that,
you're
when
experiencing
Kamala
cognitive
Harris-
dissonance.
when
I'm
Kamala
not.
Harris
I was going to explain
2019
this, but we're not
when
going to get
Kamala
to it.
Harris in 2019 threatens to pack
Get
the
in there
court,
then.
thus fundamentally undermining
I
the
want
third
the
branch of
court
our
packed.
government. Destroy.
Fuck the
Yeah,
court.
yeah. Okay.
More,
Sure, you were
more.
advocating for the destruction
how
of
is
the
that
republic.
meaning, dude?
I
How
How is
appreciate
packing
that.
the court destroying our government when we've done it before?
Because
How many Supreme Court justices did we
I want
start
to get to
with?
the civil libertarian
That's
argument.
a-
That's
that's
Lactoid's
a-
wheelhouse.
Every president's gonna nominate 15.
a unique threat
Good.
to turn the Supreme
No.
Court into a rubber stamp for every single president that gets elected thereafter.
Awesome.
You could put 50 Supreme Court justices every single time you get elected,
Do you
and
think
it's
the
going to
Supreme
change
Court
the
needs
norm
to-
away
Why is it that
from
we have
keeping it at
13
9.
districts, but we don't
All right,
have
all right.
13
So,
justices?
Lactoid, I got two things.
There's
Two things real quick, and then
why does it? Hold on. We have 13 districts. Why does that mean that we have to have 13 justices?
I mean, it doesn't. But
Because we
wait,
It doesn't. There's
because we want to.
the numbers just line up.
It's
And you
just
just
by
want
the
to
left because they don't give a shit about institutions. They only
no,
care
I do.
about
I
power.
actually care about
No, you
institutions.
don't.
I think
You
the
care
Supreme
about
Court is
power.
fundamentally
If you
broken. But
advocate
let's
for
get into
action
the
or you don't
fundamentally
give a shit.
broken.
fundamentally
Crazy.
broken. Yes, because
It
there
is
is not an
fundamentally
ethics code about it. There are appointments for life. There's all sorts of these other issues that need to be fixed. The fact that Mitch McConnell could play fuck games and get an extra justice on the court by not
The minute
doing
this
the
court
job of the
goes
Senate.
slightly
Blah blah
conservative
blah.
for
All this
5
stuff.
minutes.
All these stuff.
They all could have
requires
voted that person
fundamental
down
reform.
regardless. This
All
is
this
fundamentally
requires
different.
fundamental
This is fundamentally different than packing the court and turning the
packing the
court
court-
into a rubber stamp
pack-
for every single
Packing the
president that gets
court is
elected
one
thereafter.
way that you can fix the issues.
It's
that
one
have
way to
been
destroy the
fundamental issues.
republic.
And no, it's
How
not.
does it
But
really
anyway,
destroy the
This
republic?
is
the
very
more
easy
you
to
use it-
understand.
How does it
No,
This is
I
very easy to
have two
understand.
things.
Kamala Harris
Let me
is
do the two things. Let me do the two things because this topic is two
And then
things.
she makes
Two things.
wearing red on
You guys
Thursday.
are
Very
arguing about the
natural.
shit that doesn't matter as much.
No, it
the
matters. It
economy
matters.
is
Okay,
one.
so-
No, the
so first
economy is
thing-
one
first
area
things
where
first.
Harris is gonna fuck America.
No, we can talk about that.
No,
The
no,
economy is
no,
going to be
no,
based
no,
under
no,
Harris.
no,
yeah.
So based. Oh my God, it gets me such a rager. It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah, rent control,
Okay.
which every fucking
rent
economist out there
control
is
is
a
fucking
terrible idea.
amazing,
Minimum
and she's not
wage.
actually
Oh,
pulling
it's
that
great
down.
Student
for
loan debt
commodities when a
forgiveness, like, these
Democrat
are all
takes
Oh my
president.
wait,
God,
so
rent
she's not
control is
making
amazing.
rent
Rent
control
control is
is
amazing.
terrible. What's
It's
the fuck?
something
You have
that
no
will
idea what you're
destroy the
talking about.
economy.
I
Economically
actually do know what
illiterate.
I'm talking about, but
Yeah,
since we're
seriously,
memeing and creaming here,
no,
we're
you
not
have
gonna
no
get
idea
through
what
any
you're
of it.
talking about. You
Rent
cannot
control
actually
is
say with a straight
So
face
there's
rent
two
control.
things.
you
Why
always
would
make
you put
fucking
price
call
ceiling
that one
over
sentence.
everything?
Affordable.
Price floor, price ceiling, never good.
Two things.
That's what I'm hearing
All right,
right now.
first,
Hell yeah.
Lactoid. Two things for Lactoid. I want to get to civil liberties, so that's why I wanted to break in here and I started memeing here. But the first things first. So the reason why I don't go with the Snopes and political fact check is because I personally don't believe there was good people on both sides. Everybody that showed up to defend that statue is a fucking racist, and they can eat my ass.
Wait,
So
that's not even
Whoa,
true.
hold on, hold on. Cypher, Cypher.
The New York Lightfoot militia was there. They expressly disavow white supremacy,
They
and in
can
fact, they were
expressly
lauded by the cops for breaking up fights, and at no
They
point
can
did they
be
express
that can
anything
be
racist.
everything. So they were there to
Lactoid,
defend
I
a
think the
racist
more important
statue,
thing
but
to
that's fine.
I think the more important
No,
thing to
they were
recognize
there
here
to protect
is that
freedom of speech.
I think it
Sure
is
they were.
very.
They weren't
I
there,
think-
then they weren't on the statue
You've done no
side.
research on them. You've done no
Then they
research for
weren't
them.
done
Why
on
not?
the statue side.
Lactoid, hang on. I think it's very interesting,
Pharaohs of
like
Egypt
when
were
it
slave
comes
owners. Should we destroy
to
their
bringing
statue?
people together. I think when it comes to bringing people together, I think it is very interesting that Cypher thinks the way to bring people together is for himself
not.
for a race. I know. I think it's interesting that you think that you want to allow racists to eat your ass. I think it's a very interesting way
Yo!
of wanting support and
Yeah!
bipartisanship
Clip that
there.
one.
But go
So
on,
you
King.
got onto
Yeah,
his
fair
hard
enough.
drive,
All
huh?
right.
Just to be clear, I don't understand what that was. But just to be crystal clear here, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have consistently lied about the very fine people comment. They have
Okay,
lied
it's
about that
not
on
a lie.
every
That is
fucking
true.
debate stage.
Listen,
They have
listen,
lied.
hold
They
on.
have
didn't
lied.
lie.
They have lied. Donald Trump
It's not-
specifically disavowed white supremacy.
He can specifically disavow white
disavows
supremacists
them.
all they want,
Listen,
but the Unite
listen,
the Right
they
rally
didn't-
was
they didn't lie
specifically
about it.
racist.
Let's let Tom get it.
So you
recently
can
talked
say
to the
that
guy
Trump said some dumb
Hold
shit
on.
about the whole,
3
like,
minutes
wait,
left in this
wait,
section.
one sec.
No,
President,
he wasn't even
I'm
wrong.
sorry.
Make
I'm gonna
yourself
mute because this is
heard.
stupid.
lied more than any other
Wait,
president in
wait.
history.
Let it. We got.
Wait. I got a question.
So hold on. The fact that like the Unite the Right rally was a bunch of white supremacists. I recently just talked to the guy who organized the Unite the Right rally.
And one dead white girl. One dead white girl.
But white supremacists. So when you say there's good people on both sides, you cannot say that without talking about the white supremacists. That's all that was there. You cannot name anybody else.
You don't understand formal logic.
Hold on, wait.
You don't understand. Think about it.
Go ahead, lawyer Brian.
There's a girl that got hit by a car.
Give me 2 sentences without interruption.
Yes, I would love to hear
If he specifically said there's very fine people except for the Nazis and the white nationalists,
then he means nobody on
hold
the
on. Yes, they deserve condemnation. Whoa, I said 2 sentences. For fuck's sake, calm down. I said 2 sentences for fuck's sake.
That's more than 2 sentences. Keep going.
Yes. If he said that, okay, then there's only 2 possible solutions. Either there were non-Nazis there, or he was mistaken and he wasn't referring to anybody. When they're saying that he was referring to Nazis as very fine people, this is a lie.
They were on one side.
Rally was only white supremacists.
This was his
New York Light Militia. Look them up.
Hold on. This is
anyways. This topic is
speech,
done.
Though he already
I got one question that I've got for you.
And
never have to talk about the economy.
Once you're done, Tom.
Very sad.
Shut up, Phil.
I don't think I can. It might kill me.
And he failed at the speech, and so he was upset that his speech writers told him to condemn the white supremacists and everybody at the rally. So he came back and did a second speech the next time that did halfway between. I support people on both sides, but not white supremacists and neo-Nazis. But I also support the people who were there, and that you can't do both.
Yeah, the Trump supporting New York Lightfoot militia. Yeah.
Yes,
no, because those people weren't on the side of the right-wing nationalists. They were there to like.
Now, one moment.
No, they were primarily
30 seconds.
Racist. Yes, but they themselves were not racist.
Cypher, the Egyptian pharaohs were slave owners. Should we destroy their statues?
Some of them, yes.
No, okay.
No,
They're
answer my fucking question.
getting moved to museums. They're not getting destroyed. What are you talking about? That's all.
I was out for lying, not for this fucking Confederacy shit.
Yes or no?
I don't care.
Some of them, stop. Because some of them were destroyed in their own time.
At the end of the day,
You don't even have the fucking strength of your convictions to say what you actually believe.
4.
No, I actually do believe it, but we're talking about other stuff, and this is not
Coward.
conversation.
And
but
1.
didn't
Thank you, everybody. All right. Bring it down. We're going to be going into final statements. Thank you, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to support everything. Like and subscribe if you're coming in, popping through. That is the end of our first segment, but we were going into closing statements here real quick. One more time. You might have gotten confused there. People were saying a lot of stuff. But the first segment was, who is better positioned to lead the United States into the future, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Who is better positioned to lead the United States into the future, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? We're going into final statements, starting with Cypher. Cypher, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I'm actually a little bit disappointed we didn't get to get into the meat of it because we got caught on a couple of topics. So let's go ahead and cover some of those really quick. So our friend here, Bryce, is saying that the Kamala Harris will be bad for the economy. I disagree. I think your 3-point platform in order to ensure that housing prices go down and there's more affordable housing for everybody is actually one of the best things in the country that we needed for the last 10 years or so since the financial crisis of 2008. Because we've been underbuilding homes and not building them up enough. So that's one thing. She doesn't actually support price controls. She's talking about more antitrust enforcement that would end up resulting in companies being not able to control prices themselves by opening up more competition. So if you're a libertarian person that actually believes in the free market, you should be supporting Kamala Harris because these things matter. So that is why I believe Kamala Harris would be good for the economy. I also believe Kamala Harris would be good for other things, including justice reform, because Trump has decided to go back on his word, go back on the one good thing that he did, which was the First Step Act, and says that he now disavows it and wants to do punishment. And finally, and this is probably the most important thing for the civil libertarians out there, Trump wants to make the largest police force ever created in in the history of mankind, in order to try to deport I think they say 20 million illegal immigrants at this point, whatever the number is, it's bullshit. But it would not just going after not just going after illegal immigrants, but also denaturalizing American citizens and also saying their kids can get fucked and they can go with their parents. So if you're a civil libertarian, you want better economy,
20
you want
seconds.
more rights, support Kamala Harris for president. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Continuing into tomfoolery.
Yeah, I mean the main thing for me isn't even about policy. It's going to be about the fact that Donald Trump just seems to be a danger to the United States overall. Obviously, the attempted coup and the fact that he brought fake slates of electors to the Capitol on January 6th, attempting to extend the election or confuse the election as possible, or just straight up steal it out from under Trump by bringing in people to pretend that he won states that Joe Biden won. On top of that, yeah, using his office to go after people for petty fights, continuously using Twitter to push the talking points to all of his brainwashed followers who are going to walk around like NPCs, just repeating whatever it is he says. If it's witch hunt over and over, if it's no collusion over and over, if it's Russia over and over, it doesn't matter what it is he says. All of his people are going to run around like fucking drones, just repeating the dumb stuff that he says over and over. And I don't think that I want a president who wants allegiance from all of his followers or all of his workers. I don't think I want a president who wants loyalty from everybody around him. And I don't want somebody who wants a cult-like following to just walk around and repeat everything he says without being critical or challenging middle.
Thank you very much, tomfoolery. Moving on to Crimson 60620.
Well, we want to actually start by saying this. We've known what a Trump presidency is. Era of disenfranchisement, an era where we still don't talk about it, where women had forced sterilization, be it citizens or not. We know that his mishandling of the COVID crisis, the tariffs that he mishandled when he was first president, that he wants to increase on steroids, which will be a tax on the American people, and the destroying of our tax base, which we would use to make our country better. When we have somebody like Donald Trump, we have somebody that doesn't understand that the government isn't a business. It is a service. It's a service for the people. Donald Trump is in it for himself, be it his petty grievances, to even allow a model irritate him from Twitter. At least with the Democrats, you know, regardless of if they're putting money in their own pockets, they still want to pay lip service and some service to making the country better for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crimson 60620. Moving on, Bryce.
Okay, so I'm going to close with some comments about Kamala Harris and the economy. So some of the things that she wants to do with new housing is not actually like addressing the fundamental issues that are afflicting the West. And one of the things is that she wants to subsidize new owners. There's a $25,000 promise, or like a promise of $25,000 of funding. And if you actually look at the economic analysis done by a different number of firms and on NBER, you can see that that's actually just going to shift the demand curve to the right, and the actual gain to the drop in the price in the housing market is going to be less than $25,000. So Americans are going to pay $25,000 per new homeowner, but get maybe $5,000 out of it at the most. And so you're going to pay a cost, like you're just going to pay like a blank cost of $20,000 out of every single instance. And it's going to be like, fuck all. It's not going to be anything to the housing market. The housing market is going to price people out. They're still not going to have homes. So she's going to try to do something with minimum wage, and they're probably going to do it wrong, because the way to do minimum wage has to be staggered. And if you just introduced a blank increase of $15 or $20 minimum wage at the federal level, you're going to introduce some shocks, and the shocks are going to be really bad for the economy. She's going to fund too much post-secondary education rather than prenatal and postnatal interventions. The capital gains tax is bad. Controlling food prices, as she talked about, is bad. Controlling the rent prices, as she talked about, is bad. Uncertainty that is being signaled to the stock and bonds markets is bad. Tariffs done by Trump can be done correctly, because there is an optimal point because if you look at his tariffs to this date, the net overall impact on American welfare is like negative 0.4%.
20 seconds.
And it seems like, for the most part, she has no idea what she's doing when it comes to the economy. I am dubious about the appointees within the American government that are going to actually
10.
Impact everything, and the rest of the world might suffer.
Okay, thank you very much, Bryce. Moving on to Joe Lewis.
I think it was very clear and demonstrable within this conversation that neither side of this, Kamala Harris supporters and Trump supporters, are able to clearly show to the people watching at home that either of those two people are great futures for America. I do appreciate a Canadian is able to articulate their argument, but he is also an individual engaging in the system as a non-citizen. He is not an American. So while I think it's a very appreciative that he's able to articulate those things, he will only be able to deal with these things by proxy. He won't be somebody who's able to be living through these things and engaging with these things in a substantive manner in social, political, and economic institutions. That being said, I think it's very clear that neither candidate is good for the future of the United States. I think the discourse within this conversation and the inability for the right and the left, I'm saying left and right broadly in this case, to engage with the criticisms that both of the sides are presenting shows that neither of these candidates are substantively good for the country. And that's concerning considering the geopolitical consequences that are very clear within the next 4 to 16 years of this country.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe Lewis. Moving on to lactoid, sorry. Not the lactic acid, lactoid. Different kind of milk.
I appreciate that. So the DNC once again undermined the primary process in 2024, as they did in 2020 and 2016. I think that matters. And part of this involved lying about reports. Harris and other DNC officials lying about her report that determined that Biden was incompetent as a leader, and the DNC lied really until the last possible minute that they could when the coup of Joe Biden happened. We got a lot of lies here today. And in the defense of Kamala, we got a litany of bad points or lies that were usually walked back when put under any kind of scrutiny. We got a critique of assassinating Soleimani, a terrorist leader who, according to U.S. intelligence, is responsible for the deaths of U.S. soldiers and is generally pro-instability in that region. And we're just pretending like the assassination of Soleimani wasn't good for reducing conflict in that region. We heard about Trump turnover, but there's no real empirical evidence that's presented that this leads to less efficiency. But regardless, Kamala's turnover is higher during her reign as VP. Based on predictions, it would be pretty obvious to think that her turnover would be also high. We heard consistent dishonesty that never got fact-checked, the lies in the very fine people comment that was not only continued to be said by people on this panel, but also Kamala and Biden have been consistently repeating it. The same people on this panel calling Kamala great for the economy are also calling for rent control. They're saying that it's amazing, a position refuted by most economists. And the Kamala supporters here claiming to care about the Republic are also calling court packing great. If anything, none of this is moderate. It's all insanity. Kamala Harris is not a moderate. She's playing a moderate when her history is very left-wing, and she recklessly proposes republic obliterating and economy obliterating policies. I think, therefore, she would be worse to lead America into the future.
Okay, thank you very much, lactoid. Moving on to Alex Kirsch. You have 2 minutes.
All right, so starting off, everyone's saying that it was a coup with Joe Biden. No, because I seem to remember people on the right saying, "Oh, Joe should just drop out. Joe should just drop out." And then when Joe Biden finally realized how bad his debate performance was, he took it. It was kind of a gut check to him, and he realized I should do the selfless thing and just step aside, and he did, and then he endorsed Kamala Harris right away. So that's step one. Now, this might sound like a bad case of TDS, but after reading multiple books on Donald Trump, his presidency, and what he has planned, it shows that Donald Trump is not running to save America. He's running to save himself. Listen, we all know that Kamala Harris is not perfect. She doesn't paint herself as being perfect. She doesn't pretend to be the one that's going to solve all of her problems and save us all. She will, however, bring on people who will help her govern and be the president of this country. Trump, however, will only hire people that are loyal to him and to him alone. It should be remembered that towards the end of his presidency, as I brought up, that John McEntee had people sign loyalty pledges to Donald Trump. Only dictators do stuff like that. This is how dictators operate. Finally, I've listened to the Trump tapes by Bob Woodward 3 times. I highly suggest people listen to this, okay? Bob Woodward has interviewed presidents since Jimmy Carter all the way up to Joe Biden, and he has done analysis on all presidents since Richard Nixon. I will let him close out with the following on Trump. Trump was the wrong man for the job. I realize now, 2 years later, all the January 6th insurrection leads me to the conclusion that he's not just the wrong man for the job, but he's dangerous, and he is a threat to democracy, and he is a threat to the presidency because he doesn't understand the core obligations that come with that office. That's coming from a guy that has interviewed and done analysis on presidents since Richard Nixon. Let's take that into account. This is a guy that definitely is a subject matter expert on this bit, and he even let Trump dig his own grave essentially with his interviews. Donald Trump has said it himself. Everything is mine. It all belongs to me. He says it on the Donald Trump tapes. There's no other to say.
Thank you very much, Alex Kirsch. And finishing us off is Phil KOE.
Yes, folks. Democracy is on the ballot from the party that completely subverted democracy and bypassed the primary altogether to just christen a candidate that now the Democrats have to pretend like they're enthused for. The choice is actually quite clear this time around. You can go for either the presidential candidate Trump, who survived more assassination attempts than Kamala Harris has currently given interviews. So yeah, in terms of being ready for the job, something to keep in mind. So also another thing that we only touched on a little bit at the beginning, and I want you to keep this picture before your mind, ladies and gentlemen, is there's two choices. You either have mean tweets, cheap gas, and affordable groceries again, okay, under the leadership of Donald Trump, because when you realize that the economy really is a psychological engine, who you got in the driver's seat means a lot, because the smart money goes into commodities when they're not really all that sure. And under Trump, the Dow would do significantly better, is my prediction. But also on the other side, you have President Kamala Harris, because they don't like how some policy's going, or because they don't like the way some foreign conflict is going to be going, marching off your children into World War fucking III because they can't fucking get along. The Democrats are wanting to charge us headlong into a war that should have been solved and peace should have be brought years ago. So folks, reject the war dogs, reject the cries of war. And if you like what you heard here, you can of course find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. That's K as in King, O as in oh my God. You can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter.
15 seconds.
E as in extremely happy to know. You can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok,
10
Twitch, and Twitter.
seconds.
And you all know I'm never above shameless self-promotion. God bless. Travel well.
I actually appreciate the show. That, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the first of our 3 segments. We're going to be moving it into the calm segment, and we're going to be popping along here for time. The second, and this is going to be one of the hottest ones out there, folks, okay? The second of the drop-dead, knockdown, blood sports grade topics that we have today is, what is the best sandwich? We're going to be going through the same rotation of people. Please name your favorite sandwich, and then we're going to open it up to the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, starting with Cypher. Favorite sandwich, go.
Reuben.
Tomfoolery.
Favorite Cuban.
Crimson 6062, favorite sandwich.
We take bread, we take some cheese, we take meat, and then with other bread.
Okay, I don't even know what that means. Bryce, favorite sandwich.
All sandwiches.
I just want to say, kind of the same. He's hyping mine up. Croque Monsieur.
Croque Monsieur. God damn. Okay, moving on. Joe Lewis, favorite sandwich.
Breakfast.
Nice.
Okay. Lactoid, favorite sandwich.
Steak burrito.
It's burrito.
Burrito's a sandwich. Why is it not?
Yep.
Typical
Burrito is a sandwich.
Americans favoring other countries' food.
Alex Kirsch, favorite sandwich.
From Capriati's restaurant in Chicago, Illinois, the Bobby. It's a Thanksgiving meal in a sandwich, basically. It is the best sandwich in the entire world. It's not even close.
Send me the address because I'm in Chicago.
Oh boy, regional sandwiches. Yay.
Okay. And and Phil KOE, favorite sandwich.
Okay, this one's out of left field, but I can defend it. The cheeseburger.
All right. Solid. Okay, moving in just a few minutes of palate cleanser. Aside from that, is a burrito a sandwich? Please take it away, tomfoolery.
Well, I'd first like to say I'm a little upset that you asked favorite sandwich when the topic was best sandwich. There's a bit of a distinction, but we can. I guess
You
we
would
can make
pick
do.
a different sandwich than your favorite
I
sandwich is the
definitely
best
would.
sandwich? What kind of
I would,
sociopath
actually,
are you?
I
Are
think
you a
cheeseburger would
sandwich
win.
cuck,
Look, like,
tomfoolery?
look.
Studies on sandwiches. I went over. I got all the top polls in America. It was grilled cheese. Everybody said grilled cheese.
Oh, I
look.
see.
Look, my favorite sandwich. My favorite sandwich is FMF.
Yeah. All right.
I think you can think of because Tyler brings a good point, right? Where you could have a favorite of something while also understanding something is the best. Like there are plenty of Lisa Ann fans out there, but that does not mean those Lisa Ann fans only consume Lisa Ann's content. Some people like August Ames, some people like Tiana Taylor. So you can have
These people
a
on Twitch?
favorite. Sure.
I think
Some
August
of them
Ames
are
is dead.
on Twitch.
I don't.
I thought she was.
Yeah, I have no idea.
But my point, my
Him
point
a
is saying,
dead
yeah,
porn star?
like I didn't.
Oh,
what are you guys talking about? I'm just talking about actors.
I thought they were like
You-
music artists or something. I thought he was like
Yeah,
into
dude.
music.
I
Huh?
just came from church. I have an open Bible right here in front of me. Yeah, I'm not
Go to
familiar with
go to Song of Solomon. Go to
I mean,
Song
Okay,
of
Solomon.
so
Solomon.
you
Leftist
cleanse
to
you
bring up
cleanse your
You mean the
sin.
book about how wonderful love and sex are? You know,
Okay, yeah,
actually,
like you
between
cleanse
a
your
husband and wife
sins.
are
Okay,
wonderful.
but can
You
we look
cleanse your
back to like
sins. You got to
some
put it back in
fundamental?
the gas tank.
Let's
you
get something fundamental. Like, what is needed in an optimal sandwich? Because for me, I'm thinking that there should be like a good bread, a good spread.
Oh, I actually have an answer to this.
layering,
The
quality
only
ingredients, and maybe
Bread
something
and two
grilled.
ingredients.
perfect
but here's-
sandwich is always bread, a meat, a cheese, and a sauce. All right, everything
So-
else is
Sauce?
fucking extra.
Yeah.
But
Wait,
here's the
yeah,
thing.
some
Okay,
sort of
so
sauce.
so
Yeah.
here's
grilled
the
cheese
thing.
isn't a sandwich now.
But
Wait,
here-
what would you call an ice cream sandwich then? That's
call
not
it
a sandwich when meat's required? I
Sorry,
think
maybe
it's
not a
probably
meat
sandwich.
necessarily, a
It is-
protein. All
Peanut
right,
butter and
mine's always
jelly?
just meat.
Yeah.
But
That's why.
here's the
Look,
thing.
that's why I said the
That's a
breakfast
fucking
sandwich. The
sandwich.
breakfast sandwich is clearly the superior sandwich
PB&J
because of its
is
I wanna give
versatility
place,
as a sandwich. Like as a
I wanna give
breakfast
Phil-
sandwich, you can make it a sweet thing, you can make it a savory thing, you can make it sweet and savory. The protein is very open, so you can have
Yeah.
whatever you would like. Especially Canadians, they like to do like the ouvert. They talk all about these weird ass sandwiches with some fancy ass name that nobody wants to read
Your
on the menu
bag
to
milk.
embarrass themselves. And me as
Croque-monsieur.
an American, myself as an American, I don't want to go
American.
to a restaurant if I cannot pronounce their food, because at that point you might as
that's
well
when
just
it's better.
deport them.
Well,
That's
You know,
How
if
do
I
you
can't
shop at
pronounce-
McDonald's
the less I
then?
can
I'm
pronounce
just
it, the
afraid
more
of
I
being
want to go.
embarrassed. Like,
But
what's
here-
the big deal here? I don't see
But
the
here-
big deal going to a restaurant and being like, "Oh, I don't know your food and culture, but I'm really excited to try it and eat it." and
Well,
get
you're not
mind blown away."
American. That's why.
The less I can pronounce
Ooh,
the fucking
true.
Says the
restaurant's
Canadian.
menu, the
Listen,
more
we
excited
have so
I
many
am.
similarities. To say that I'm not American is like completely ignorant of the fact that we have so much overlap. in
We
our culture.
don't
have
have
very little
indigenous
overlap.
graveyards,
Look-
bro.
if
you look
We,
at
we
one of your, like,
figured
your
that
greatest
part out.
pop stars,
You guys
hold on.
clearly didn't.
How popular is Drake again? How popular are like a lot of like the
Bro, you
athletes
can't
and-
bring
I
up
don't
you
know.
can't bring up Drake in America.
You really
The
wanna
year you
go
got
there?
fucking turned inside out by Kendrick Lamar.
Like, I don't think I think it's
Come on.
really
He's not
telling.
like
I think
us.
it's
Don't
very
talk about
telling.
Drake to
I
Americans.
think it's very telling that a Canadian would use Drake, a known pedophile, for their argumentation of the
PDO.
best rap.
Listen, he's
I'm
just an
just saying.
example. Like, it's not my fault. Listen, it's not my fault that Americans love pedophiles like Epstein, like
Oh,
Trump,
hey,
and like all these
stop,
other
stop.
people.
Yo, Bry's
You
got a
use
weird
Drake in
case.
your
Why is he
argument.
around?
We use Drake. We didn't use
How did we
Drake.
go from
Wait, listen,
sandwiches
I'm just
to
highlighting the
PDOs?
fact that he's popular
Yes.
in America. You can't
You're
single
right.
me out
We
for
weren't gonna be
identifying
Donald
what's
Trump.
popular in America.
Listen, I need to defend the reason why the Bobby is the best sandwich. Okay, once again, I said it's a Thanksgiving meal because everybody knows that the greatest holiday is Thanksgiving. Why? Because
Yeah.
you have no obligations except to bring
Oh my
good
God.
food. And guess what? You've got leftovers for the next week. I mean, little on the fact that the
True, but-
Bobby, but the Bobby, there's not too much bread on it. It's got slow roasted turkey. It's got cranberry sauce, handmade stuffing, and mayo. Oh my God! it's
Cranberry
it's-
sauce.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
had this kind of sandwich before.
Yes.
But I'm not a
It is
fan of
revolting.
Thanksgiving. So
Now,
How dare you?
if I
take
may.
that back. You take that
I-
back. right now.
Absolutely
I
terrible.
want to
Cranberry
see
sauce.
if
Not only is it
anyone can
revolting,
counter this.
But you're
Just
gonna have
get-
cranberry
like
sauce
turkey.
spilling all over your fucking
We're gonna
shirt.
hold on,
when
everybody, for just a second.
burrito-
We're gonna let this continue on for another few minutes. If you want to use the restroom before we start, in about 5 to 6 minutes, this is a good time to pop out, grab a drink, use the restroom. But please continue the sandwich conversation, or whatever the
Yes,
fuck you guys are
please.
talking about.
Bravo.
I
But I
think
just want to
the
what
contents of the
sandwich have
sandwich
you
are really
eaten the
important.
most in your life? I'm betting
Ass.
it's cheeseburger.
Ass.
It
I
doesn't
doubt
matter.
that.
Ew,
Ass is a sandwich.
ew.
It's got protein.
Wait, what
You know-
would you?
No,
What would you rather eat?
no,
What would you
no.
rather eat on the move? Like something that's slipping and sliding and spilling all over the place, or a burrito,
Cheeseburger.
which is, it's all packaged together. It's very easy to
Cheeseburger,
eat.
bro.
Okay, if my ass is slipping and sliding, I'm gonna make sure my girl goes to the
Well,
hospital
where's
because
the-
there's probably
where's the-
something else wrong.
Well, where's the burrito coming from? Are we talking about, is it from Moe's? Is it from Qdoba? Is it from Chipotle? Is it from Taco Bell? 'Cause
I'm sorry, what the fuck did you just say?
He said Chipotle.
This is why Americans can't go to places where they can't pronounce.
I get it from a guy in a
can't.
truck named Manuel, and it's the best, right? It's much better than anything that you've proposed thus far. But all those ones you proposed thus far are pretty good. Like, they're not bad. I agree.
I think it's very.
So
and they're
back to
all
it,
superior
back to it.
to
I
fucking
appreciate
cranberries.
Yeah,
I appreciate your admission that immigrants are actually good for Americans. I appreciate that.
I think it's very telling that the divide in America is
Latinos
so
are a great
stark that
addition.
you can't even find common ground, because on one hand you have an American here that's saying like, oh my god, I love burritos. On the other hand, you have an American here that's like, oh my god, I love breakfast sandwiches. Why can't you guys come together and be like, oh my god, I love breakfast burritos?
No,
Like,
I
yeah.
love
Well,
ass
I
way
said-
more than I love breakfast sandwiches. I love ass. way more
Burritos
than I love
are
breakfast sandwiches. How dare
more
you.
malleable. You can make them for breakfast. You can make them for lunch. You can make them for dinner. You can make them as a late night snack when you're hungover. There's all sorts of things you can do, right? There's all sorts of things you can do with a
You
burrito
can
that
cook
you
while you're
can't do.
hungover. You can cook
Yeah.
while you're hungover.
Of course.
That's not a good hangover then.
I don't know what fucking hangovers you're having, but like I can normally make food. I'm not like so far gone, you know.
That's not a good hangover then.
Yeah,
I'm not cooking while I'm hungover, no shot.
I try not to,
all
like,
the
you know, get
playing around
poisoning.
and banging and everything. The patience
but
that
I
it
think-
takes to wait for food to be ready. No.
cranberries are
Here's
the worst.
another
Just to be clear, though,
facet to it.
cranberry
Like,
sandwich
should be a hot-
crazy.
Should it be a
Cranberry
hot sandwich or
sandwich?
cold
What?
sandwich? I mean, we already
Well, it
know.
depends on
So
the day.
before I
hot
ask this
sandwich.
question, we already know. Yeah, we already know Joe's answer. Joe's answer is going to be hot because he's obsessed with ass. So, how do people think? Like, do you want a hot sandwich or a cold sandwich?
Depends on the day.
I've been eating a lot of
mostly
cat
hot though.
sandwiches
Yes.
lately.
That's what I want. Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually trying to decide what I'm gonna do for lunch. So it's either gonna be a hamburger, one of those
Cat sandwiches.
seasoned hamburgers that you get from like gyms, or I'm gonna make me either a roast beef sandwich, ham sandwich. Yeah, I'm out of turkey.
Yeah,
so,
Crimson, you can actually order. Capriati's does do DoorDash, so if you want to order that sandwich, you can have it delivered to you. Because I used to go there all the time when I worked for JB Hunt. Because I used to go to Chicago all the time. So
Alex, are you CIA or something? Like you've been hyping up this plate for a while.
what do you mean?
I'm just saying, like, do you have a sponsor that you want to disclose to us?
No.
You sure about that?
Why?
I'm just making sure you've been hyping up this place pretty hard. Like I don't know if like they're giving you money or.
I wish they would. Wait, you can get it.
Hey! You're hyping up ass, so I want you to be careful. of that.
Ass
That
has
right.
no sponsorships right now. As far as
ass,
I know, I'm not an
ass,
ass sponsorship. It's just that like I'm just a very strong supporter. It's okay to
All right.
support something and not be
Reduce the
sponsored by
overall
it.
sexual talk, please. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We are going to be wrapping these things up. Is everyone back? We got all of our people locked in, ready to rock and fucking roll. By the way, the best sandwich, if we're going to use definitions that aren't even fucking sandwiches, is tacos de birria. Okay? They're the best. They're the fucking
Closest
best.
to mine, just to be clear. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
host agrees with me, therefore I'm right.
Perfect. Absolutely well executed.
A
Good job.
Nebraska
Good job.
prime rib sandwich. You ain't never had it. It's heaven on earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are moving into the final subject of the day for the Hippy Dippy recruitment. I would please ask anyone, if you're watching back through this in the VODs after the fact on anyone else's channel or on mine right now, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to follow our parent show, The Hippy Dippy Roundtable. Go to @DylanBurns 1776 on Twitter to learn more about that. Follow Dylan Burns TV. Follow me, Westside Tyler here. Follow all of our people and follow Dylan Burns Live to get updates about the parent show. Our final topic of the evening is going to be, should the Department of Education be dismantled? Should the Department of Education be dismantled? This is going to take us out to the end of the show here in just an hour or so. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be your, folks, this is going to be your last chances to be heard on this episode of Hippy Dippy Recruitment. So make sure you take advantage of the time and get in there. We're going to be starting off with 2-minute introductions for the section with Cypher. Cypher, take it away with, should the Department of Education be dismantled?
In order to understand whether or not the Department of Education should be eliminated or not, you need to first understand what it primarily does. And what it primarily does has nothing to do with school curriculum on the state level. States still very much control their curriculum and have all the say in it, or the vast majority of say in it, anyways. What it primarily does is that it ensures that there is some form of funding to Title I schools, which are the poorest schools in the country, as well as special education. Without the funding for Title I schools and special education coming from the federal government through the Department of Education, these programs would be entirely dismantled or bare bones in a number of different states. Texas being one of them, and there was a couple other states I don't remember off the top of my head. I live in Texas, so I can talk to that a bit more. But Texas would have a lot of issues when it comes to ensuring equitable education for special needs children. So that's one thing. The other thing is the Department of Education collects a lot of data. The data that it collects helps us understand what are the best methods to understand how people learn in general. And that without that government funding and the government coming in and doing the studies, those studies would not be done as much because the grant writing from the Department of Education is how those studies are funded. And so therefore we would not know what the best practices are. And finally, it is grants to colleges and universities for various other studies, as well as public education, sorry, not public education, but higher ed education for people such as myself that would not have been able to go to college without the Perkins loan or Perkins and Pell Grant loans, as well as VSAC and other things that the Department of Education underwrites. So for those reasons, the Department of Education should not be eliminated. If anything, I could make the argument that it should be expanded. And I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Cypher. Moving on, tomfoolery. Should the Department of Education be dismantled?
Yeah, no, I don't think it should be, and I don't think that it's ever a real conversation. It's Republicans for a very long time have been saying that they're going to get rid of the Department of Education, all the way back to like Newt Gingrich, Bob Dole, now Donald Trump, and Trump's talking about the fact that like the United States is at the bottom of testing around the world, which is true, but that doesn't actually seem to be the reason in reality on why they want to get rid of it. The reason they want to get rid of it is because of social issues. They have problems with a lot of things like respecting trans people, or they're afraid that like their kids are going to be forced to learn about evolution or something like that. Even over the last year, they've put out tons of propaganda and lies about the anti-Semitism bill, saying that this was going to be a something that was gonna get everybody in trouble just for saying things about Israel or saying mean things about a Jewish person who might have done something bad, which was all insanely untrue. Everything that came with the anti-Semitism bill was all stuff that had already been implemented by the Department of Education for years before that, and was already part of the Civil Rights Acts. And so it made literally no changes, but they all ran around fear-mongering the entire time, acting like it was going to be a big deal, because they just have problems with the Department of Education overall, and they don't like having to respect minority groups, I suppose.
Okay, thank you very much, tomfoolery. Moving on to Crimson 6062.
So let's just address the elephant in the room. The reason why a lot of the conservatives want to target specifically the Department of Education is, as been mentioned before, it's about denying minorities' rights. It's about making sure that our certain children aren't mingling with other children. We have Atwater actually saying that because they couldn't use the N-word, they had to morph the argument into about parents' choice and school choice, and changing it to where, well, it's your choice. When we all know that the reason why, and we have seen it, most conservative administrations in the states have actually defunded public education to go to private schools or religious schools to try to get around the separation of state. We have charter schools which put money in the pockets of public into private entities, which made public schools a lot worse. The reason why it's best to have the Department of Education because it's standardized and not just left to the wild, wild west of let the business community handle it.
Okay, thank you very much, Crimson 60620. Moving on, Bryce.
Thank you very much. Also, I just want to say thank you, Cypher, for copy pasting verbally the mission statement of the Department of Education from their website. As a Canadian whose country
Plagiarism.
is higher level of education and better scoring than America, I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to help my American brethren. And we already saw the Harris group, like the pro Harris team, are terrible at math and because of the economics points. And we should point out some things about America and why it sucks. Educationally, that is. In PISA 2022 rankings, you're ninth in reading, below pretty much everybody else in the West, 16th in science, and 34th in math. Now, obviously, there are kind of issues and contentions with the PISA ranking system, but the fact that you're 34th in math, that's a high enough error of margin. Even if you accounted for like 10 rankings, you'd still be like 24th. So even if like the standard deviation or like whatever standard of error is, you're clearly underperforming when it comes to math. And we can see this across like other multiple state levels. And so I think that, yes, it needs to be defunded. I think you need instead something called the Department of Human Development, where you can institute on like a two-way relationship with states, implementing something like the International Baccalaureate. And I think that if you had the what's considered like honors, because I don't know, maybe they just feel like Americans are too stupid. I don't know. For what's considered honors right now, it should be the standard level of education, and there obviously should be like a vocational alternative. But yeah, you need to reinvent the whole mandate and the mission statements.
Well, thank you very much, Bryce. I would like to remind everybody that Americans almost never think of Canada, and Canada thinks of America every goddamn day. Moving on, Joe Lewis,
I thought they
take
were
it
the
away.
51st state.
The Department of Education has a lot of limitations, which I hope we get to. Broadly speaking, I support its dismantling. This does not directly mean doing completely away with the offices within them, which I'm sure we'll be able to have time to parse out in terms of the semantical differences. The General Education Provisions Act prohibits the federal government from exerting control over curriculum, programs, and educational practices. This allows them to influence policy, but they cannot overtly mandate particular curriculum changes. Their funding comes from appropriations, which means broadly their funding will change based upon the makeup of Congress. There are also limitations when it comes to the budget, since, as Cypher brought up, Title I is very expensive to implement, but that also is a limitation because of the budgetary constraints within that. So it's very difficult to fund Title I substantively. Another example of this is with Title IX. The department has also limited its compliance reviews and it's responding to complaints. OCR, which is the wing of the Department of Education that's responsible for enforcing civil rights, relies on schools' voluntary voluntary implementation of corrective action, and this enforcement is limited to the legal challenges in place, which means that you might even have somebody file a formal complaint, but legal challenges will cause that to drag. Education, in my opinion, should be left to the states. However, it's reasonable to recognize that there's a through line that education, in particular K through 12, is important for shaping the future of social, political, and economic institutions. Consistency of topics that need to be substantively taught in order to engage in American social, political, and economic institutions is important. I think it's something that we should encourage. So if you want the general of my take, if all of that was just words to you, I support the repealing of the Department of Education Organization Act of 1979
Oh,
and
sorry.
the redistribution of responsibilities within the other departments.
I let you go. A couple seconds over there. I'm sorry for not giving you the countdown. That's my bad. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on from Joe Lewis to Lactoid.
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to be arguing tentatively in favor of deletion of the Department of Education. I think it's a generally useless department that exists in part to expand reliance on the federal government. It is really difficult to nail down what it specifically does, since the 10th Amendment allows for states broad discretion and control of their own education policy. It primarily offers and then forgives, thus handouts, loans to disproportionately high income earners. It also sends some federal funding to schools. The Department of Education is relatively new. It was created in 1979, and prior to 1979, most of the education activity was housed in a different department and other departments. I think abolishing the Department of Education doesn't necessarily mean that all the functions of the Department of Education will disappear. Most of them, or some of them, would likely be moved just to other departments, the ones that we find necessary. That said, when we have an opportunity to practically and pragmatically reduce federal power and federal taxes, I think it's on moral principle is a good thing, since it relies on the forcible taking of my money to fund. And it does so inefficiently. According to the Government Accountability Office, the department is not very well done. The GAO identified 4 key shortcomings in the department: quote, oversight and monitoring, data quality, capacity, and evaluation methodologies. It found that on many grant funding initiatives, they were missing key monitoring documents, including grantee performance reports, which describe what kind of results the funding actually gives. By and large, America, we spend a lot more on education than the OECD average, but yet we get poorer results. So when we have a Department of Education that has problems, according to the Government Accountability Office, and overall the country is not doing very well when it comes to bang for our buck in education, I think it is time for a change. So if we can reduce federal government power in a relatively inefficient department, I think it's a good and reasonable thing. If practically
10
speaking, there are
seconds.
some things that we need that Department of Education to do, we can simply move that to other departments.
Thank you very much. Wait, what the hell? Who the fuck? Who are you? Lactoid. Jesus Christ, my bad. Moving on to Alex Kirsch. You're back.
Alrighty. So, first things first. No, it's absolutely absurd and preposterous to get rid of the Department of Education. Okay. The thing is, I recognize that there is a serious problem and a deficiency within the Department of Education, but you don't solve the problem by simply getting rid of it. You just find a way to make it better. The first step in making sure that you can actually make the Department of Education better is by actually having more transparency regarding it and making sure that you actually have competent people in charge. And the best way that you can actually solve one of the first steps in getting rid of like all these ridiculous things is like standardized testing, which a lot of private institutions actually implement across the country. Standardized testing does nothing for the American school children. It does absolutely nothing. It has proven to be completely ineffective. It doesn't teach any children any real life skills. So the best way to do that is, first things first, if you want to make sure that the Department of Education is good, the first thing you have to address is class sizes. In some urban areas, class sizes are massive. There's like 30 children per classroom. And as someone that's actually been an instructor, I can tell you it's really hard to maintain the attention span of children if a class is 30. So that's the first thing you have to attend to, let alone the fact that if you get rid of the Department of Education, but you have no real plan to replace it with anything, that's not going to help anything. You're just going to make the situation a lot worse, let alone the fact that those that say we don't want the federal government involved in everything else, the federal government is pretty much involved in a lot of things. I mean, Lactoid brought up a good point. We spend a lot on our education system, but we also spend a lot on our healthcare system, and yet we have some of the most poorest quality healthcare across the world. You don't get rid of the healthcare system by that. I mean, it's not fixing the issue. You have to address the issues, and the first step in identifying in solving a problem is identifying that there is one. You have to find out what the problems are, and then you have to mitigate, and you have to you have to delineate and
15 seconds.
Okay. You just have to find the right people to actually make it. And the best way to do that is find people that have actually worked as educators to solve that problem.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alex Kirsch. And last but not least, take it away, Phil, KOE, one more time, should the Department of Education be dismantled?
This has been a big issue for the Republican right for many, many decades, as has been pointed out. Since Ronald Reagan's time, there has been efforts to get rid of the Department of Education because by Republicans, it's seen as one of the great intrusions of the federal government into daily life, into something so fundamental, which has traditionally been the auspice of the states and localities, the education of our children. And we all as a parent who has one child in the education system right now and another one on the way that will be in the education system, this interests me quite a bit. Now, some things to keep in mind if we do get rid of the Department of Education. There are some upsides. It's not all going to be like the sky's not going to fall from our heads. There's an almost $80 billion budget that now goes back to the states. For example, New York loses about 6% of its resource efficiency from just sending tax dollars to the federal government and then having it meted back to them. So there will be actually some efficiencies, and the bigger states are going to see a huge windfall from this. And also another reason is it would make it easier to eliminate the teachers' unions, which would make school choice an easier thing to attain, because that will be one of the best things we could possibly do for our students. If you care about students, you're pro school choice. If you're not pro school choice, you're not pro student, Period. End of discussion. Full stop. Mic drop. There's just nothing else to that. If you don't like school choice, you're not pro-student, because it should be the parents and the students deciding what's best for them, not you, not a bureaucrat, not a teachers union, and not a Department of Education. And if you agree with any of that, find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, folks. Oh, you know I'm never above shameless self-promotion, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Okay, thank you. That was exactly 15 seconds left to get it on one more. Ladies and gentlemen, just before we hop into the open panel, one last time before we let this thing rip, rock, and roar, you can join in the fun here on the YouTube. Pop in, hang out, engage in the polls, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and support every single one of the people that are here on the panel. One more time, should the Department of Education be dismantled? Is our topic. Open panel, go.
So two things.
So I
really
want to
quick.
address,
So first of
one
all,
thing.
For a couple of people, just real quick, what is the problem with the department existing in and of itself? There's been a bunch of programs like No Child Left Behind, which changed eventually to like No Child Failing or something like that. But
every
what is
student
the
succeeds
problem?
act.
Why not? Yeah, every student succeeds. So what is the problem with the department existing? Why not try to do something that fixes the problems that you have with it instead of just getting rid of the entire department in and of itself?
I think you have to
Department of
first
Education
recognize
is
that
a
there's
Something the
manifestation.
Canadians
issue.
said was a
Hold
good
on,
idea.
Wait, hold on one second. I think you need to just kind of like first identify the fact, like, okay, hold on. America is supposed to be like this leading superpower of the world, like the best people, the best this, the best that, but you guys are lacking in a lot of
Yes.
different areas when it comes to education. So clearly there's
Having
an issue
Canadians on
both
our panel.
with
But
like the
it's
state
not at the
level
federal
issues,
level.
but it is at the federal level.
The federal government does not
Lactoid has
do
already identified
anything.
that it's an inefficient system, and
It might be an inefficient system, but the curriculum
It's
that you
not
brought
just
up.
inefficiency. There's like
Lactoid
problems with the
recognized that
data
there's an
collection,
efficiency
like
with
there's-
the system. However, what you're arguing is something completely different and not
Exactly.
exactly related to
Okay.
Lactoid's argumentation.
Well, no,
I'm
no.
not saying that our
if you want
arguments are
access to
exactly
certain
aligned. What
federal
I'm
funds,
saying
you have to
is that
accept
there's an
some
issue at the
curriculum
federal level.
and programs.
I can specifically have a different take and a different argument than Lactoid, and I can also say, like, yes, we agree that at the federal level there are
No, I
problems.
get
and
it.
it's correctly
But you're
identified.
so
factually
where's your-
wrong
where's
about
your
why
point?
our
schools
education
that get
systems
greater
suck.
leeway with their
Okay,
curriculum because they don't
So my
take federal
point-
funds. I know one. It's 3 miles away from me.
That's
And,
very
my-
let Bryce finish. I just
So,
want to make sure it's
I'm
clear to
just
the
saying.
audience that you guys are on different sides of this. I'm in agreement with you too, by the way, but our argumentation can be very different for the sake of the conversation.
Sure. Yeah. My take is that the Department of Education has like inefficiencies that deserve, like, at the very least, an audit, like a severe audit to look at like every little place that they're
That's what I
bleeding
mean,
cash,
is
because
why
they're
not
bleeding
They
cash.
have been audited
Why
by the
not fix the
GAO.
inefficiencies?
Oh, they have. Okay.
Why
Oh,
not
sorry.
fix
I
the
apologize. I take that back. So they
Yeah,
have been
the
audited already.
Government
Problem
Accountability
is,
Office taking a
schools,
look,
in order
and
to
it's
get
terrible.
access to certain
Yeah,
federal funds, have to accept certain curriculum.
Yeah. So okay.
And so to
That-
say
that's
that
not
it-
Yeah,
True.
my
That's-
take is exactly
that was-
exact. So
that's
my
true
point
under
is
the
that
No Child Left
it's an
Behind Act
inefficient thing,
anyways.
and that there needs to be some kind of like symbiotic, like two-way relationship between the federal government and states in order to institute something like, even if it's not specific, you don't even have to call it. You can call it the American Baccalaureate. You can come up with some like pro-America first,
Yeah.
whatever the fuck you want.
Sure.
And some kind of like standardized curriculum that the
But we
states
can't
can like
though.
choose
That's
from.
that's what I'm trying
No.
to tell you. We can't do
Okay,
that because
yes,
of the
I
10th
understand.
Amendment.
But
What is
you
your
can
tenth
amendment?
withhold
The Ninth Amendment.
funds. You can withhold extra
It's
funds.
been
Which is
largely
why we
driven
don't
by
have a
state
national-
control education.
With the reason
But I
why we
wanted
don't
to-
have a national education standard is because of our Constitution. So
I
when
wanna-
you say that the federal government is the reason why our education system sucks, you are just factually wrong. That's why I wanted to break
That's
in with.
why
But
we don't
Lactoid,
like the
please go ahead.
Department of Education, because it's
So-
a federal
No.
intrusion.
So
Yeah, you don't
Kaylee, I
like
just
it
wanna
because
address
of the
one
other things, but it doesn't matter. Lactoid was going to say something.
Yeah, I want to give a shot on answering Tom's question, because I know that this debate topic is sort of framed as to giving us the affirmative position of like, should it be abolished? But my principle is different. I think my principle is, when the government takes money, there needs to be some kind of good justification for them. Justification, just like, by the way, any kind of law, there needs to be some kind of like justification for them to do it, because they are taking your money, right? And so the real question is, why should the Department of Education continue to exist, right? I think all forms of government should be justifying. They should have to justify their existence to the people that they claim to represent. And when you have the Department of Education that's just, I think, failing so hard, and also representing this sort of federal intrusion into the states on top of that, while being inefficient, while sucking up a lot of tax dollars, I don't think it's sufficiently justified its existence. I think that you could abolish it. You know, we have examples of countries abolishing departments and it turning out relatively well for them, like in Argentina. I think that it'd be perfectly fine to abolish the Department of Education. And, if there are certain things that we decide we absolutely need from the Department of Education, like that can be a time to discuss that. And we can maybe put that into some other departments. But right now, the department has just been so plagued with just inefficiencies. It is quite literally like a swamp in terms of inefficiencies.
Nothing
Black
better to
Droid, I
get
got a
a
question
to make
for
your
you.
car
Take an
run better
opportunity-
than abolishing the wheels, right?
I'd also like to take an opportunity to answer Tom Foley's question too, because something that concerns me about this conversation is that those who are in the affirmative of dismantling might unintentionally produce misinformation that might make the conversation difficult. So a little bit of context, right? The manifestation of the Department of Education came after certain clarifications the federal government had in relationship to education. I'll give you a very clear example. In my opening statement, I explicitly mentioned the Department of Education Organizational Act. That came after the General Education Provisions Act. That act is something that I disagree with. Now, there's other semanticals within that that I don't really care about getting into, but the general, for people who are watching to understand it for yourself, Tom, is that it prohibits the federal government from exerting control over curriculum, instructional practices, and educational programs. That means the federal Department of Education cannot overtly tell states what they must teach in schools. That goes to Bryce's point, which creates
Yes.
complications
withhold
with
extra funds.
educational rankings, and they cannot withhold funds, by the way, unless they do a particular violation with something like Title IX, Title I, the Civil Rights Act, etc. So while there is a threat of fund withholder from the Department of Education, that can only exist through reporting, which then leads to legal challenges. So the problem that I have
3 miles away
is
from a school
that-
that doesn't
Isn't that the
take
way it
federal
should
funds.
be,
They have
though?
greater control over their curriculum.
The problem
It
that I have, just so that
Isn't
we're
that the way it should
incredibly clear here in the distinctions of this argumentation, is that the federal government, the federal Department of Education, and the responsibilities can easily be disseminated to the local states, but there still needs to be a consistency of curriculum across all 50 states and territories, like the Washington, D.C. So with that being said, I think it is fair to say that we have a curriculum problem and the consistency of educational programs and practices. And one of the things that we could do, if you're not supporting the complete abolishment or the repeal of the DOE Organization Act, very clearly we can recognize that there should be some standard in curriculum across all 50.
Assuming the Supreme
You see,
Court would allow
Lactoid,
it.
it's not happening, but it's also happening. It's a great thing that it's happening. You see,
No, that's not at all what Joe
KOE,
said. Please don't be
KOE,
disingenuous. For the love
I
of
just want to
fucking
address
God.
one thing. I want to address one thing, KOE. The fact that you use school choice where it was fully disseminated that Atwater used that as a racist term, I think it shows that we should have in the Department of Education, because we should actually study political history.
What are you talking about?
School
Like,
choice
no,
is
this would help the
fantastic.
most
School
disadvantaged
choice is
students.
racist? What?
That's only school
that would help
choice is
the
a
most
whole
disadvantaged.
separate. School
Yeah, it would
choice
help
is
the
a
most
whole separate
disadvantaged students
discussion.
imaginable.
It actually
That's
does
what
no
we
proof
do
that
for American
there's
students.
no
We should not talk
is
about school
good.
choice. It's a
Because
whole
the
separate
teachers
discussion.
union
Please, let's
is a
not talk
voting
about
block
it.
for the
Yeah,
Democrats.
it's a
They're
winning
We will
already
go
voting
off
for
the
the
rails.
teachers union, the voting block for the Democrats, so they will
No, no.
We
defend.
will stop.
Does school choice actually improve
School
academic
choice is
performance?
going to get us
Yes.
off the rails of the
Over the course of
conversation.
4 years. Over the course of 4 years.
I never mentioned
did a deep
anything
dive-
about
I did a
racism. I
deep
just
dive
said
into
that
this.
Atwater.
For the love of
I just
God.
said Atwater used it as a term to be able to say something instead of saying, a specific word and talk about that.
1 on
He just
6.
And he's
went off
dead,
to
so
school
who
choice.
cares? He's dead, so who cares?
And school choice is going to get
It's
us off the
history.
rails on this
Those who
conversation
don't
because the
learn
Department
history-
of
No, because
Education.
if you
I
eliminate the
agree with
Department
you.
of Education,
That's
make
not
it
It has
so then-
nothing
so
to
then
do
why-
with
so
it.
hold on. So I'm really curious
you're
about this.
right.
Actually, I'm very curious about this. Can you please articulate to the audience who's watching why you need to use Atwater in your argumentation about history? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, sure, because I understand you like to dodge
no idea
questions.
what that is.
The
You never
point
asked me a
was
question,
made-
but please land your plane.
The point was made, why bring up school choice, especially when it was used as a dog whistle. And my statement was, we need to study not just history, but political history as well.
Why does the dog whistle matter in the sake of your argumentation?
Did
It's a
you
rabbit
hear my
hole.
point?
We
Well,
did,
you
but
hear
it
my
doesn't.
point?
Why
mean
is it
to-
the dog
I
whistle?
literally
That's
said
my
because
question.
it was brought up.
Do you think he's using it?
You
as a
brought it
dog
up.
whistle? Do you think he's pushing?
No, I
a
wasn't.
specific
That's
type
why I
of
said
fund?
you weren't
You
listening.
brought up Atwater in your argumentation when you clearly could have just said we need to do a better job at teaching history of the United
Correct.
States. I think
Do you
everybody in
think
this
I
panel
was
would agree
using
with
that
you.
as some sort
But
of
using
dog whistle?
Was a
wait.
point.
But to be
Said
fair,
no.
like bringing up race in the conversation in this context is a waste of time. So
Did I say
please don't do
race?
it again.
Did I say race?
You did say
You-
racist.
No,
You
no,
said-
no, it
you
was
said
an
Atwater.
outlier.
use
Come
these
on,
words
that's
as
right.
race. This is we can move on. Just
School
don't
Did I say
choice
race?
will
I
help
said
every
right.
disadvantaged
Yeah.
community in
School
America.
choice has
Period.
nothing to do with the Department of Education. The Department
Yes,
of
it
Education
does,
doesn't do
because the
anything.
teachers
No, it
union is
doesn't.
held up by the Department
The
of
teachers
Education.
union doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
can
can
we move on
actually
from school choice
throw something,
entirely?
throw something entirely.
Holds up
So
the
I
teachers
can
union,
throw a
get rid of
completely
one, so
different
you get
curve,
rid of the other.
pivot.
I want to ask like the pro Department of Education people just one question.
Go ahead.
Maybe we can build a bridge here, right? Because we're saying, look,
I have a question
you,
too, but-
you have to justify your existence, and if you can't do that, then I think it's perfectly fine to axe departments, right? I don't like this idea that once a government thing comes into power, it never goes away, even if it happens to like be terrible and inefficient and kind of be a swamp of just sort of a revolving door and all these problems. If you guys are you guys saying that? Well, maybe we shouldn't like get rid of it, but we do need to completely overhaul it. Is anybody here saying we should leave the Department of Education as it is, or is everybody here saying either get rid of it or change what it is completely?
I'm of the position that we can not change what it is completely. I think that's an unfair statement of some of the people.
Dramatically?
I would say some. I would say change it somewhat. I don't know how much change is needed, but clearly there's some change needed because,
Yes.
like you said, there's
Because right now it
inefficiencies.
sucks. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say it sucks because there's some inefficiencies, but inefficiencies are going to exist when there's any bureaucracy. There's inefficiencies on the state level when it comes to
We should
funding
minimize
local
bureaucracy,
students.
right? Like we should minimize, especially when we're talking about federal
It
bureaucracy.
depends. It depends
if
on
we
the
have inefficient
department
bureaucracy.
and why it's inefficient. Some inefficiencies are just going to exist at the nature
Cypher,
of the beast
when
because
people
of slowing down stuff.
When
Yeah,
people
I
steal
remember-
my money, when people steal my fucking money, I
don't consider taxation theft.
Well, you were wrong, but I at
Yeah,
least
it's
expect them. I at least expect them to spend it in a responsible manner. When
I
they steal
believe
my
that they are
shit
spending
and then they
it-
just fucking mess it up, like there needs to
don't
be
think that's
either
what's
a
happening.
massive change. It needs to be according
No,
to the Government
that's your
Accountability
opinion.
Office, according to the GAO. But there
The
needs it's not just the opinion of the GAO and myself. Correct. I do think there needs to be either a dramatic change in the Department
Right,
of
that's
Education,
where
thus
we disagree.
that it
Department
doesn't
of
really
Government
look like what it
Efficiency.
does now.
Doge.
It doesn't
Okay,
look
wait,
like
you
what it
brought-
is now, or get rid of it completely. Right? They're one of the two. Because the
it's not one
solution
of
of
the
just
two.
like like little tweaks, like no.
I'm
it's
not
too late for
saying
that.
little tweaks, but you're saying completely overhaul it. I'm saying there's a space between completely overhaul, gut it, change, start over from scratch, which is what you're saying needs to happen, and not change it at all. Or change it very little. There's a gap there, and
I'd be
in that
happy
gap.
with both, but I don't see why we can't just get rid of it. Like
Right, I
don't-
understand that.
There's
Your
no
position,
reason the
but you asked
government.
us what our
There's
position
no reason
is.
that a government
We didn't
department
even
needs
get to
be
ask
rid of
points
it.
or
It's
not
not
gonna
gonna
solve
lie.
anything. Just getting rid of is not going to solve anything. All it's going to do, like, you're just going to create
Yeah,
like
well.
a huge. Well,
Okay,
it's not.
It'll help the
I think you
states.
can approach this from a
I
different.
didn't even get to
Well,
answer
I
the
don't
question.
think-
I'm gonna introduce.
Alright.
I'm gonna introduce a pivot from this. So when you're talking about like getting rid of, let's say two main things. You either want to like significantly change the Department of Education on some levels.
This is framing of
or-
the conversation that is not.
I'm
what
not
the-
trying to
the
specifically
people-
address to yours. I'm saying
Okay.
two ways. Like, so you have two people on one side, sorry, like 2 points on one side that you want to like either nix the entire department or you want to change it so it's a fundamentally different thing. That's on one side. Obviously, other people on
Fair
the other
enough.
side have different points. So what I'm saying is that so you look at the Department of Education. We've heard rather from Lactoid that the GAO has identified that it's an inefficient department. So there are clearly ways they can do things better. And if we already know that it exists only because it's an amalgam of historical like other departments, and in order to do exactly what we're proposing, to be more efficient, to be more effective, et cetera, then this makes a lot of sense to do one of the two where they're saying like reinvent the wheel or get rid of the wheel
Yes.
entirely. Because wait, I'm not done. Just give me like 30 more seconds. What you do is you recognize that across the United States, the states are already identifying like, hey, we should all work together to try to come up with a common frameworks. Down in the South, there's the SREB, the Southern Regional Education Board, or like Southern Regional
Answer to Common Core, yeah.
Yeah, and there's like the National Association of State Boards of Education.
Yeah.
So there's obviously like some need, some utility, some any of those two things in identifying that like, hey, wait, what if you actually did just get rid of the Department of Education and everything that it was doing, put in this new like state of human development
Because
and
Because I
work
don't
with
think
those
that's going
states
to
on a
solve.
two-way relationship.
Because I don't think that's going to solve the issue. Because what Joe
it
Lewis is
won't.
talking about, is a fundamental philosophical distinction between people like Lactoid and people like myself and Joe Lewis. I would put us all on the same page here to a degree when it comes to philosophical look at what government should and should not do. All right. I believe the Ninth Amendment and the way the Supreme Court is currently structured would prevent what you want as your fix from happening, because they don't want to turn over any power at all to the
You don't
federal
have
government.
to. The point is like a two-way relationship.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
No,
you
no,
have
no.
to turn.
You don't have to.
They would be against the two-way. They're against the two-way relationship. That's the point. So what you want to have happen is not
really.
not an issue.
I don't know
Canadian
that
had
it
a
would
good
s-
idea.
I
The
don't think
Department
that-
of Human
The 10th
Development's
Amendment.
actually a
It's-
hell of a thing.
I think.
The
Hold on.
Department
Wait.
of-
Hang
you
on.
can
Hang on.
change
I
the-
think it's
it's not
very.
gonna
That'd be a
do
great
anything.
idea.
Like Cypher
start
and I
from birth.
disagree. Cypher and I disagree on the overall like meat of his point, but I agree with him here, which is why I think a much easier approach to go is through repealing of the guts that exist within those things. But there's something that you mentioned, KOE. I'm gonna just make sure that you're on record of saying this, and I have a question with that. So your statement that I heard you say is that parents and students should have control essentially over their educational destinies. Is that your position?
Yes, absolutely. I've actually
Okay.
homeschooled my daughter before. It was
Fantastic.
health reasons, but yeah, no, I
Okay.
I
Great.
absolutely believe that parents and
Great.
children should have the final say over their education's destiny. where it
Fantastic.
goes.
Then the follow-up question: should students be allowed to vote for school board members in elections?
Ooh.
You said explicitly, to make sure that we're on the same page here. You said that students and parents should have control over their educational destiny. So I'm in a current state
Well, where
of
they go to
affairs-
school, yes, that's what school choice is. But
Right,
would it
but I'm
give them
saying-
voting rights? I
voting
think
rights
that,
for
like,
school
okay,
board members.
I say
think
no,
if the individual school makes that a policy, I'm not going to oppose them, but they don't get they're not actually part of the age of majority until 18. So children are not fully rights bearing creatures. They are each day becoming more intelligent by the day, but until they become 18 in our society, they do not fully bear all of their rights.
So I don't understand that contradiction then. So you don't believe
No contradiction
that
there. You
students
just don't
so
like
you
the
don't
answer.
believe that no, you don't believe that students should have control over their educational destinies. You believe that there's a threshold
Parents
where
and
it's
students.
justifiable.
Parents
If
and
there's no
students
students
so-
involved.
So
Joe's point is
hold
there's
on.
no
So
student
is your
involved in this.
what's the position? It's you're right now right now
It's
in
because
contradiction.
it's school choice. No, there's no contradiction. It's because children
No,
have
no,
not
no, no.
reached the age of majority.
Just
So
drop,
he's-
just drop
so when
students.
student-
It's
Oh, stop.
parents.
So when students
yeah, he
reach the
wants
age of
students.
majority, then they should be allowed to vote for school board members. When a vast majority
They
of
should be allowed
students
to vote if there's an election going on. Period.
So a vast majority of students,
I mean,
once
like,
they reach 18,
I know you think.
are
I know in your
already
mind you
their-
thought this is like, oh, this is going to be such a great gotcha.
No, I'm not trying to got you. I'm trying to.
If you took 10
I'm trying to.
seconds-
Like, I'm gonna
Wait.
make this so
If you
incredibly
took 10
clear
seconds to
because
just let
it's
him
so
talk, you
right.
would understand.
I let him talk plenty,
I
and I get where-
understand.
but
I
it-
completely
just-
understand. I
That's all.
completely understand
You've
why you want to
interrupted
make
me.
this a particular spectacle, but I'm trying to understand.
I'm pretty good
how
at
you-
it.
I agree, which is why I very much appreciate you being here. However, I think it's very.
Handsome
I'm
mug.
trying to understand. You don't necessarily believe that students should have control over their educational destinies when it comes to electoralism and voting for school board members. You think that should still be in the purview of the
that's-
parent. Is that what I'm understanding your position to be?
More or less, yes. But the child.
Okay,
the child
there we
says,
go.
I don't want them
Thank
to.
you.
I don't want to be at school X, Y, or Z. The parent should be able to pull their kid out of there.
Thank you for clarification.
But that's
So
still the
this is
parent,
where
though.
this is a function where we would disagree, because I think that it is reasonable for students. I would do the threshold at 16. Usually that's high school age, that they should be in a way voting for their school board members. And there's already different districts that are implementing that. So that state control thing and like disaggregation in
Like I said,
liberty and
if some
freedom
district did
is
that as
something
their
that
policy,
agree
I
with.
wouldn't stand in the way of it, and I'd see like, let's see how the
Sure.
laboratory of democracy works out. But I'm not
Sure.
going to make that nationwide fucking policy. by
I
any
think
means.
it should be nationwide. Then
So do you
another
agree with school
question-
choice then? Because you asked me
Absolutely.
that question direct. Okay, sweet, excellent. So
Yeah,
we need to get
so
rid
do-
of the
so
teachers
do,
union.
so do I, just not the way Republicans and libertarians
Yeah.
do it.
Like I
Wait,
know,
wait,
I
wait,
know
wait,
it's
wait.
very.
You mean actually having school choice? That's the way you don't want it to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
So
it's
yours
not
would be
actual
not
school
like
choice.
so
It's
KOE,
preferred
I'll
to
give you
Finland
an
and
example,
Take a
right?
voucher to any school
I'll
you
give
want.
you
Parents can drive as far as they want. They don't give a
This is a
shit
whole
where,
separate
it's where they
discussion.
want to
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
where they want to go. And so, yeah, that was actually something that I ran into for a little while in my daughter. Like, we wanted to go to this different school, but because of our zip code, we couldn't get. So this is actually a very real thing. So let's not pretend like we currently
it's
have
not-
school choice or it's something
We're
that's
not.
even in the
KOE,
system
we're
right
just
now.
trying to steal you
And
on
the
topic.
Dem-
That's why I
and
don't
if
want to
you-
talk about the school
If you
choice stuff.
advocate for the Democrats, you're not advocating for school choice because they're
Democrats
not going to let
don't
the teachers
support
union.
Democrats
off
don't support
because
students
that's-
voting for school board elections, and like even in my state,
Yeah,
they want to
well,
block
yeah,
that
you're-
outright if
that-
it was
you-
like a bill would be brought
Yeah,
to the
your
floor.
birdwalk topic. Yeah,
No, like
Sure,
okay, so
okay.
But
Hey,
they're
I
also
have
not a fan
another.
of parents
I have
like coming in
another.
and complaining, right? They want like the unions to control.
I have
everything.
another. I have another question. I
Yeah.
already know. I already know where Lactoid sits on this because we had this conversation before. KOE, should individuals at any, we'll say, just for the sake to make sure your answer is consistent,
they should
here
all
and-
wear body
and
cameras.
clean.
Everyone.
No. So KOE, do you believe that parents should have the right to bring forth, we'll say, a signatory process in order to remove teachers from schools? So can a parent bring forth articles of impeachment towards teachers?
No.
I got like, don't get me wrong, there would be a breakdown, but there's this delicious part of me that just wants to say yes because we've all had shitty teachers in the past.
Because just so we're on the same page here, in most states, parents can bring forth removals of school board members. So that's okay, but why not teachers? That's
you
for
know,
Lactoid, but we'll
unfortunately,
get to that.
Lactoid, you need to kind of concede this because, yeah, unfortunately, statistically speaking, your child is far more likely to be molested by a public school teacher than any other group of human being on earth. So maybe there should be a little bit easier way to remove it. Bullshit. Look it up.
Wait. Okay.
It's off topic.
Okay.
Stop.
Ew, this
I
is-
don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into that.
All right, hey,
Twitch.
No,
Sure don't
no.
wanna
Stop.
protect the kids. Here, why would you?
Twitch.
Stop.
I'm not getting into that, don't worry.
Stop. We're good. That is a completely not acceptable conversation topic for TOS reasons specifically. We're going to cut it there and move on to the next whatever the fuck someone wants to start with.
Yeah,
Right, but
I'm just going to generally,
doesn't invade, like-
generally comment. Hold on real quick. I'm going to generally
Yeah.
comment like,
Thank
no, students should not be able to be voting for school boards, shouldn't be able to be voting to remove teachers. Then the same reason why we don't allow students to vote for anything.
Right. I
Because
didn't say so. Just for clarity, because I want to make sure you answer this clearly. I'm
Yeah.
talking about parents bringing forth articles to remove teachers.
Yeah, I'm fine with parents being involved in the educational process. Parents,
Sure.
like adults,
Sure.
I'm cool with that, right? Because adults have the requisite level of brain development to have the judgment necessary to be making these kinds of decisions and to be bringing forth these claims. Children don't. And I think there's a lot of pitfalls that can happen when you have children, first of all, that don't have the developed mindset to be able to, consent to anything, but also be able to interact really with the government. We don't let them
They
vote
lack
for a
you
reason.
capacity
extend
for
it-
But then on
informed-
top of that, I think that a student's complaints should be vetted through their own
Sure.
parents, as opposed to just ridiculousness of having students be like, oh, like the teacher took away my phone, I'm gonna like try to get them removed. Like
Yeah.
ridiculous.
So
I want to
Lactoid,
add
to
something. To
expand
this.
this a little bit.
I want to
Yeah.
ask something because it's sort of on this. I think it might be an interesting addition to this conversation.
Like
We're
what?
talking about voting to eliminate teachers. Should people be able to vote in this case, if you can vote, to eliminate students from a school? Seriously.
Bro,
To be
you know
like,
that-
okay, so I will be the heel
Somebody
here.
got
I
bullied.
think it is reasonable to make the argumentation to bring forth articles of removal for students if brought
yeah.
forth by parents. I would
you
extend
can
that.
see the
I
goth
think it's
paint just form on them in real time when you vote them out. Are you kidding me?
no.
So
I think
here's-
it's reasonable. I think it's reasonable to
fucking
say. I think it's reasonable to say that a school community can determine if somebody is disrupting the educational process so much so that they ought to be removed for a general period of time. I think that's a reasonable conclusion to come to. But again, that's based upon the community's decision. Because if we're extending it, which is my argument, I believe that school-age students should be able to vote for school board members. My threshold is 16 or their freshman year of high school, whichever comes first. I also believe that parents should be able to vote through the same process that they can for school board members, which is in very incredibly difficult to do. They should be able to have that same opportunity to do it for teachers. But I do think members of the school community should be able to vote to remove students. I think that's fair.
And
Yeah,
folks,
but
just
I'm
so you know,
just-
we're on
I'm
our
gonna say
last
it in the
5
streets
minutes.
before they
Not
get
Yeah,
students,
can I
that's
respond to
not
that?
yeah, actually.
As
You know that.
as a liberal that's not going to agree with Joe, or as a liberal left that's not going to agree with Joe. So my hesitation to allow all that stuff is because we are in a censorious kind of atmosphere. And I would hate to see someone's rights get violated by the majority rule and have tyranny of the majority literally in several different scenarios. Whether that is the shit-nosed kid that's actually a crap and is limiting people's ability to learn, or just the kid that happens to be gay and it lives in a conservative area. Same thing for the teachers. This is why I'm hesitant to go ahead with this. We have to protect rights, which is why we have balanced powers, etc. This is why the teachers unions exist in the first place, because principals were just going around and doing nepotism and putting people in charge of things and all that stuff. Everything that exists
They
that
should
has
all wear
issues,
body cameras.
everything that
Principals,
exists,
teachers, all of them.
okay,
Right,
whatever.
Cypher, I understand the core of your concern here, but the thing I want to make sure very clear about, I'm not saying through majority that a teacher is just automatically removed. There would still be a trial for those particular situations. The same thing that happens to school board
I'm a
members.
little more okay
Because
with
when
that.
it comes, like for instance, when the school board
Probably
member
help the
is
teachers
attempted
out
to
if
get
more body
removed here
cameras.
in this case, I would still think that individual student would need some type of representative that would have to be through the school
Sure.
board to defend their case,
So,
and then
so this would be
the
essentially
actual
a legal
like
case.
yeah, it would
that's brought
essentially
up
be
by
a
pocket
legal
report.
case to
Okay.
potentially to remove that student. I think that's totally fair to do.
There would
So
have to
my
be a
question
lot of
is-
rules and regulations.
How long?
from my-
That
Because
seems like
that
an
could just be a
extensive
case
process.
of
How's that-
bullying.
Right, you
It
can
could
put
be.
guardrails on and do it, right? This is actually a workable system. I think it
Yeah,
makes sense.
I would
because
like
there
to
are
have
some-
a good-
Kid out of school.
I-
We're all
Joe-
assholes.
Joe and
Okay?
Lactoid, I'd actually like to
Some
have this
kids are
conversation
bigger assholes
separately.
than
if you guys
others,
don't
right?
mind.
So
Absolutely,
This is great.
absolutely. I
There's
agree.
some kids that are like genuinely dangerous, and I think it's perfectly fine
No,
for
for
like
sure.
for a community to be like, look, this kid has like assaulted 3 teachers in the past. We got to send this kid to like the last chance
but we
Three
vote
minutes.
you out,
military school
Stifler.
or something
Okay,
along those
Stifler,
lines.
we
Right?
vote you out because you suck. Okay,
No,
that's
like,
what
in the
all
case-
this
He
is.
sucked.
in the
That is
case of
not
Loudon-
the
process we
so-
have now, where we
so,
can
for
actually
example,
bring disciplinary.
Yeah, bro.
In
Or
the
teachers
case
against
of
someone.
in the case of Loudoun County, I think there's a very clear example of a student that was a threat to the educational community. Parents had reservations of this student's misplacement. This was due to a bunch of other things for political reasons I don't want to get into, but in the core of it, that student was not safe to the educational community. That student assaulted a kid in one school. The Board of
I know
Education
you're talking about.
transferred that student to another school, and they assaulted another student.
2
and
minutes.
that caused the superintendent of losing his job because of that. And like that could have been preventable to some type of process of removal. That's my opinion.
Or prison. I mean, in the case
As
of
long as
assault.
students aren't voting on this removal, because that'd be ridiculous.
Correct.
We gotta have, it's got to be parents
So-
and like
And then there's still like the defense process where like that
bring back
individual
the
still has the right to defend
Lactoid, I don't know
themselves.
if you heard me, but I'd like
Added
to you and
rooms.
Joe and I to talk about this separately. I don't know if you heard me. So if you want to do
I
that,
1,000% agree. This will be
100% do that.
Let's talk to Wick, make it happen.
Yeah, so here's the one other question. Like, for those that want to get rid of the Department of Education, right? So you say that you kind of want to get rid of the Department of Education because of the level of bureaucracy that makes it insufficient, right? That's what you're saying, basically.
well, no, it's just
One
has a,
part,
it's
yeah.
got an
1
unproven
minute.
track record. It's like a shitty track record, and like there's no. I'm not saying the reason why it justifies itself. What's the justification for keeping it around?
Well, I'm trying to find like if it's just a simple yes or no question. Like
Well,
if you just
I
like
was
want to make
trying to answer that earlier because that was his answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
Well,
right?
it's
So
twofold.
keep it around.
The reason
I
why
was
it should
gonna say
be
that, like,
removed is
30
almost every
seconds
country, every
left.
first world country has
Been an
some
hour
sort
and
of
nobody
federal-
answered
I'd love to hear
question,
Tom
right?
speak because he hasn't
Hold-
spoken at all
hold
for
on.
pretty much the majority of the conversation.
Who?
You motherfucker, go.
Oh,
Rock.
almost every single country has like some sort of federal standard. Like
15
all of the
seconds.
countries that are first world countries that have federal standards are the ones that have like the best test scores in the world, and so we do need some sort
8,
of federal standard.
7,
We just need,
6.
better.
We can do that without the Department of Education.
I think we can fix it though. I don't.
All
think
right,
we
thank you
need
very
federal
much, Tom, for popping in there at the very end of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going into final statements. Once again, you're going to have 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead, plug yourselves. Obviously, we got one guy's ahead of y'all in plug, so you better learn how to do it from the fucking maestro himself. Regardless of his politics, KOE is in the middle there trying to build his audience. I expect that from the rest of you. Go ahead, finish out. You're going to finish out your last thoughts on this topic, which is, should the Department of Education be dismantled? One last time, should the Department of Education be dismantled? Go ahead, give your final thoughts on it, plug it. You're going to have 2 minutes, starting off with Cypher. Thank you.
Thank you for having this debate. I appreciate it. So in my opinion, the Department of Education should not be abolished. It should be reformed. How that reform looks is going to be dependent on what Congress says and the kind of compromises that we make there. I don't think it is so outrageously inefficient, et cetera, that we need to start over completely from scratch. But I can understand that realization and have a fair debate about that. As far as other things with that, I think that we actually do need to see a national education standard come out. I am not comfortable with these state compacts because they're being driven by purely political partisanship nonsense that is happening. We have other things like that. Whether we can't prevent them, that doesn't mean that we should encourage them, though. So that is where my position is at. But if you liked what you heard from me, you can check me out on YouTube, not Twitch anymore, but YouTube and TikTok. I'm starting to make a lot more TikTok videos because it's easier and it's less time consuming. But I do like to do long form content on Cypher Report, where we bring you the news and information you need in order to decrypt the world. So again, you can check me out on YouTube and TikTok. Long form on YouTube, short little bits on TikTok. I'm trying to grow my audience in order to do live so I can debate people on TikTok because it's where the action is happening right now. But again, thank you for having me on here. Again, Cypher Report, every social media platform that exists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cypher. Moving on to tomfoolery.
Yeah, as I said, I think that like improving the Department of Education is probably going to be the best thing to do. I think that most people's issues don't really have to do with like the actual Department of Education or what it is that it's there to do. And I do think that like, yeah, having the standards from a federal standpoint that's going to go through some sort of department that's directly focusing on this is probably the best idea. How we do that is probably the thing that we should have gotten into most. And I do think that this should exist in some way. Yeah, my name's Tom Foolery, or actually, yes. My name's Tom Foolery Show! The man with the name, the man with the fame, the man with something else that sounds like that. You found me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and all the other platforms. Tom Foolery Show on YouTube, TikTok, all the other, Kick, and all the other platforms.
Okay, thank you very much, tomfoolery. Moving on to Crimson 6
Imitation
zeros.
is a sincerest form of flattery.
6-0.
So at this point, I do want to recommend that we keep the Department of Education for a standard, and we should actually empower it more. Get rid of the inefficiencies, of course, but also make sure that we have a standard across the nation. Doing so would actually prevent different administrations from different states from injecting political policy that we see from requirements for educational materials from different states that may, influence certain principles that they feel they should influence, such as when we have Texas, where they influence one of the nation's biggest book producers for schools to try to make it where slavery was a choice for some people, or just a work program that encouraged people to move from one continent to the next. If you want to hear more of my political views, see me gaming, see some of my art, you can actually reach me. You can actually watch me on my channel here on YouTube at Crimson60620, on Twitch, or see some of my arts at my website, crimson60620.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crimson. Moving on to Bryce.
Hi, so I'm Bryce. I'm a fourth-year Bachelor of Science and Economics student and double majoring in philosophy. I don't really have anything to plug because I don't really stream anymore, but I might stream after I graduate. I'm going to close my argument saying that the DOE doesn't have to exist. I think Lactoid is right to query whether or not why it should continue to exist. I also think that Joe is right to repeal that act in order to allow the federal government to do more in a two-way relationship with the states. That doesn't have to necessarily impugn or reduce the state's autonomy. I think it's as Amartya Sen once said, that the human development is the true pathway to real human freedom. I think America has a chance here to lead the world in primary and secondary education. education and not just post-secondary. The state should be given a menu of options of like international baccalaureate, French baccalaureate, A levels, and choose one on a state-by-state basis, which can then give them a standardized framework for every different county and everywhere, every school even. I think the Department of Human Development could fix the DOE's failures and also create more relationships between each state, as we see with like the Southern Regional Education Board. That's all. Got to reinvent the wheel.
Are you going to plug yourself?
I did that at the start. I don't really.
Oh, my
have
bad.
any plug.
Okay.
Bryce live on Twitch, I guess.
Thank you very much, Bryce. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to Joe Lewis.
Yeah, so for me, education is a social, political, and economic institution. It's all three of those things at the same time. It functions to help shape America and Americans. And that statement, that the recognition that all three of those things poses very good questions worthy for debate. Should students vote for school board members and be allowed to? Should homeschool students and parents like KOE have access to guidance and educational resources within their neighboring school district? Should KOE's homeschool student be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities within a school district? Should parents and community stakeholders, like essentially taxpayers of the community, be able to vote to remove teachers the same way that they can vote to remove school board members? Should the federal should the federal government have a more direct say in curriculum in schools? Should there be a public jobs program for school-age students? Like, just the very challenging, the Federal Department of Education posits those questions and a bunch of others. And I think one of the biggest failures of the most recent emergence of educational discourse around politics is the lack of a discourse in education. I think anybody who spends a little bit of time in education is at the very least DOE skeptical, as some people brought up and articulated in the conversation, or at the very least looking to change it in some type of way.
30 seconds.
Everybody on this panel acknowledged the discrepancies within the Department of Education. I think that was clearly articulated, but I strongly encourage members of Tyler's community and those in the broader community to have these conversations at home and ask these questions.
15.
Because the more we avoid that, it just creates a perpetuation of the state
10.
and the duopoly that plagues American politics.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joe Lewis. Moving on to Lactoid.
Yeah, I think it's great when federal agencies are perpetually put on trial. I think that whenever the government has something, they should have to continue to justify it, because it relies, its very existence relies on taking from you. Even if you think the thing should exist or the service should be provided, at the very least, when that service is not provided maximally efficiently, this is a moral question, because they are taking from you, and if they could take less from you to do the same job, then they have an obligation to take less from you to do the same job. And from what we've talked about with the Department of Education, I think it's very clear that they have not done a good enough job to justify their existence. According to several international or government audit agencies, they're particularly bad when it comes to monitoring their own assets, when it comes to providing funds, when it comes to what they do. It's particularly bad. It's particularly politicized. And I also think the results speak for themselves as well, right? The people on this very panel who were defending the Department of Education were also saying such things such as defending rent control or defending packing the Supreme Court, which demonstrates a complete ignorance in terms of civics and economics, clearly a sign that the American educational system has failed and that we have to do something differently. So if you like what I had to say, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube.
Okay, thank you very much, Lactoid. Moving on to Alex Kirsch. Take it away.
So those that were opposed to the Department of Education didn't really offer any real solutions. They just said get rid of it. That's about it. No real. They said school choice is a good way to fix things, but school choice actually destroyed parts of the Department of Education, especially in the state of Michigan. So it did not work. Who ran it? Betsy DeVos, who was the former Secretary of Education under Trump. So school choice isn't a guarantee. We've seen how charter schools, they actually doctor their numbers to make it seem like they have a better approval rating, which it's proven they don't. As a matter of fact, they run out of funding that comes like essentially from taxpayers. They tend to squander it, and sometimes don't even have classroom or buildings to teach children in. This is something that we could also fix, but just saying get rid of the Department of Education isn't actually getting rid of it's not going to fix itself overnight. It might actually create more problems. So I didn't really hear any compelling arguments as to why you should get rid of the Department of Education. It says just get rid of it because federal government bad. That's not a solution. I'm sorry. There is no other way to look at it. If you could, and I'm willing to address the issues. And once again, as somebody that's actually worked as an instructor as well, I can tell you it's class size plays a lot into it. Getting rid of standardized testing is a real big part of it as well. We have to focus on what the issues is like, why it is inefficient. How can we make it better? Getting rid of it is not the answer, especially if we don't have a proper solution to kind of tie it in together. So if you like what I have to say, and if you want to tune in my content, I do current events on tap every Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I bring on 1 or 2 guests. We talk beer, and alcohol and whatnot. And we also talk about 2 current events. I bring on 2 current events. They bring on 2 current events. And then we each get to share regarding that. I also do that. I also do one-on-one where I do deep dive issues with certain people. Like I've interviewed Clint St. Mosley, who's running for the 9th Congressional District in the state of Michigan. So if you like my content, look me up on Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, and X under the Alex Kirsch Project. And I yield my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex Kirsch. Moving on to last but not least, Phil K-O-E.
Folks, the reason the Department of Education needs to be eliminated is one very simple reason. Since its inception, test scores and literacy rates have gone one direction. Down, down, down. But folks, if you like what you've heard from me, you can of course find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. If you find me on KOE Nation on YouTube, you can find me for Knife and Tool Review Mondays, Poetry Reading Wednesdays, Beer Review Thursdays, Whiskey Review Fridays, Spirit Review Saturdays, and Bible Verse Sundays for the holiest day of the week. Also, join me later tonight on KOE Nation on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch for Bible study stream tonight. Folks, I hope all of you make it back here happy, healthy, much the wiser. Also, Dylan Burns, hope you make it back home wherever you are in this life. Be safe, sir. Travel well. And folks, of course, you can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, KOE Nation on TikTok, KOE Nation on Twitch, and now KOE Nation on Twitter-X, depending on your opinion on Elon Musk this week. That's K as in King, O as in oh my God, you can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, and E as in I am extremely happy to know you can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. And folks, you know these lips of mine, they can speak no evil. I'm never above shameless self-promotion. And with that, I yield back to you beautiful people.
Thank you very much. I couldn't quite catch that last guy's name, but thank you very much for participating. Ladies and gentlemen, theys, thembies, and any and all pronouns, thank you for once again coming out to the finest 2.5 hours of political debate available on the World Wide Web. We invite you to seek out any and all of our contestants and support them on their streaming platforms of note. Special thanks as always to our event organizer, Danabo, the original Hippy Dippy chairman himself, and mobile Russian drone test target, Dylan Burns. Support Dylan's work in Ukraine and the original Hippy Dippy on Dylan Burns TV and Dylan Burns Live. Follow him on Twitter at DylanBurns1776 to keep in the loop. Finally, thank you to me, Tyler Bell, your wonderful, handsome, and God-tier host. If you want to support me, my regular show runs Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. EST on YouTube and Twitch. Just search Westside Tyler and you'll find me. Finally, follow me on Twitter as well to keep up to date on all my shit posting at Tyler Westside, and make sure to mark your calendars for our next Hippy Dippy recruitment shows on October 20th and November 3rd. And until next time, as always, stay safe out there. Everybody wave and say goodbye. Bye, everybody. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for watching this video, and the next one should be popping up on your screen. Subscribe, and if you haven't checked it out and want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon. Thanks.